Thank you. And then I'm going to turn it over to Supervisor Stopper.
I'm going to have the pleasure of reading the proclamation, Ms. Turner. Anything else any of the other staff would like to say?
Stacy also is our dress coordinator, so she tells us what to wear every day, so it's helpful.
Yeah, no, I'm thankful that I have someone that tells me how I may dress also.
It's convenient.
All right, so we'll start out. Proclamation recognizing September 20th, 2022 as National Voter Registration Day. Whereas Calaveras County is committed to empowering all citizens to be informed, active members of our democracy in order for our government to function effectively and respond to the needs of our people, citizens must play a role in shaping it. And whereas each year on National Voter Registration Day, we reaffirm the strong sense of civic duty among our people and encourage friends, family members, and neighbors to get involved by registering to vote. And whereas it is up to each individual to exercise the right to vote that so many struggle to obtain and protect. When we do not take full advantage of the right to vote, we not only give away our voice, we also give away the ability to shape our community's future. And whereas today, National Voter Registration Day, we recommit to exercising one of the most precious rights we as Americans and take seriously our responsibility to make our voices heard in the next election cycle. Any public comment? Nothing online, I assume?
There's nothing online.
All right, Madam Chair, may I bring it back to
Yes.
the board for a motion?
I move this item.
Thank you, Ms. Callaway.
I second.
Thank you. A second by Mr. Toffenelli. All those in favor? Those opposed? Now therefore be it proclaimed, the Calaveras County Board of Supervisors recognizes September 20th, 2022 as National Voter Registration Day and encourages all eligible citizens to register to vote. Thank you very much. All right.
So good, Ben.
So it's okay for me to be out here, Ms. Callaway, complimenting me on the way I look this morning. So, I think that dress code.
We need to go over here, I guess.
John. No. John, he doesn't get it. No.
We go shortest to tallest.
You're ready?
I think so. I have the alarm.
All right, 1, 2, 3, smile.
Someone can just,
That was the big one.
Thank you. Perfect, thank you very much.
Thank you.
You know what? I just want to thank. Oh, yeah. Oh, sure, guys.
Thank you very much.
I just want to say thank you to the clerk's office staff, and when it comes to elections, that time you work in numerous hours and days. And it's just relentless with a lot of scrutiny from some of the public, and you keep your heads high and you do a good job. We appreciate all the good work you do.
Yeah, I want to echo what Ben said. Thank you guys very much. I mean, you guys run a great election. And I know I think I speak for a lot of us, have great confidence in your guys' ability and honesty, how you do it. And it's not always easy. So thank you very much. You guys are doing the bedrock work of this whole democracy. Thank you.
Are you going with them, Marita?
of the ballot
you're-
they forgot
she's
to count.
She also works in the
Here, and
department,
she's
too.
pointing.
Playing Joe.
Moving on to general public comment. This is any item of interest to the public that is within the subject matter jurisdiction of the board and is not posted on the consent or regular agenda may be addressed during the public comment period. California law prohibits the board from taking any action on any matter which is not posted on the agenda. If public comment is completed before the 30-minute allotted time period, the board may immediately move to the next order of business. If public comment is not completed during the allotted time period, it will be continued as the last item of business in order to provide an opportunity for the remainder of comment to be heard. At this time, I'm going to start with Zoom and then move to the room. So that any Zoom comments, public comments, or any items not on the agenda.
At this time, there is no Zoom public comments.
Okay, thank you. Now I'll move it to the room. So please be mindful of the light, and each individual has 3 minutes.
Just in case I don't finish, you guys can read it. You want me to start now?
Thank you. And
Thank you. Good morning. My name is Christine Albertine. I would briefly like to discuss the relationship between the District Attorney's Office and Animal Services. Evidence or lack of evidence is extremely important in any criminal case that the district attorney decides to pursue. Evidence makes or breaks a case. As such, evidence must be preserved. The protocols of preserving evidence, that is the chain of custody, must be scrupulously followed. Animal Services is responsible for sheltering and caring for all animals that are placed with them. The District Attorney's Office places animals that are evidence in an animal abuse case with Animal Services. I believe one animal abuse case is currently pending and one was recently closed. The evidence in one case consists of 4 dogs. The other one was 4 roosters. The dogs that were puppies when they arrived are no longer puppies. The dogs had been at the shelter several months before the district attorney released them as evidence. 3 of the 4 dogs have been adopted, but the roosters still remain as evidence. The staff and volunteers at Animal Services, in addition to their regular duties of caring for the community animals that are housed there, must also take care of the evidence animals. The conditions at the shelter are such that it's difficult to keep them isolated from the community animals. The evidence animals take up space that could be used for other purposes. The time it takes the staff and volunteers to take care of the evidence makes their already busy job more difficult. In this particular case, the dogs initially took up 3 kennels. When the puppies were old enough, they were separated to avoid any pregnancy issues. That meant another kennel was used, bringing it to the total of 4 kennels. The evidence dogs cannot be walked like the regular dogs, but still need to be let out of their kennels. The puppies were put in a puppy pen and needed attention. Since the dogs and roosters are considered evidence, they should be kept in a secure location. If not, there could be evidentiary issues later on. For instance, one of the dogs bites another dog or staff member. What do you do with the evidence then? Or roosters or dogs get into a fight resulting in injuries and no one notices it. It's not like you can lock them up in an evidence locker. The defense will use all avenues to try and prove that any abuse or injuries were not caused by them. Charging the owners $10 a day does not cover the cost of keeping these animals. I've been informed that the district attorney's office has been tentatively budgeted almost $7 million for new offices, while Animal Services has been tentatively budgeted $1.5 million for a new animal shelter. The required studies for the animal shelter still need to be finished. Thus, out of the $1.5 million for the animal shelter, the studies must first be completed, plans drawn up by an architect familiar with animal shelters, and approved by the necessary parties. I dare say this does not leave much new money for a new shelter. It is possible, and hopefully probable, that some of the money is going to the district attorney's office be moved to Animal Services to aid in building a shelter that will house the district attorney's evidence and help in staffing Animal Services since it is the staff at Animal Services who are responsible for the chain of custody. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other public comments?
Hi,
Good
my name
morning.
is Lori Morris, and I'm going to follow up on some of our reading here. Regarding livestock. Calaveras County has a tremendous need for animal services to be able to handle significant numbers of horses and other farm animals such as pig, sheep, goats, cattle, llamas, etc. Over the decades, untold animal neglect has gone unchecked in the county because of the lack of ability for CCAS to handle large animals. And when CCAS does take on large animals, it's often at the detriment of the small animals, such as goats taking over dog yards. CCAS has a large, beautiful property which could be built out very well and efficiently for horses and farmed animals with the right consulting and planning. Any planning for large animal facilities needs to include space for evacuated animals. A small 6-stall horse barn is not enough space for regular large animal intakes, let alone possible evacuated animals. My primary suggestion is to create small pastures, and every pasture can share a 3-sided loafing shed. There should be walking space along 2 or 3 sides of every pasture as well for ease of feeding and also to provide more options to keep animals separated. There must be a quarantine pasture area for new or sick animals. Biosecurity needs to be considered at every level. There must be a separate shed, tools, manure forks, wheelbarrows, and a manure pile for the quarantine area only to prevent cross-contamination. There needs to be a designated manure pile easily accessible by wheelbarrows and trailers. The hay storage area needs to be easily accessible by large vehicles for easy unloading. The current setup requires hay bales to be hand carried in one by one. A small barn in addition to the pasture could definitely be useful for animals that need more shelter than a loafing shed can provide, such as medical cases, smaller animals like potbelly pigs. A barn should be designated with electricity, running water, and a wash tub, good lighting, and ample space for a veterinarian to work on an animal like a horse. Space for bedding, straw, and/or shavings need to be considered. It could be on its own shed or even a stall in the barn.
Thank you.
And these are extra copies for you. In barn design, a possibility is having stalls on one side and storage on the other. There needs to be at least some space for tack, buckets, and other miscellaneous barn type items. I recommend a cement aisleway in the barn for ease of cleaning and sanitizing. And don't forget space for wheelbarrows and manure forks. A simple overhang on the outside of the barn would suffice for that purpose. I highly recommend incorporating a round pen somewhere near the barn. The shelter already has plenty of corral panels to do this. The area would just need to be graded and sanded. A round pen has multiple uses. It is a good place to evaluate horses in particular. It can be used to turn out as a turnout for horses living in stalls long-term and also as an additional safe pen as if needed. Beyond infrastructure, staff with extensive knowledge and experience with all types of horses and farmed animals is crucial. Experience with companion animals such as dogs and cats does not directly transfer to large animals. Along with appropriate facilities for these types of animals, appropriately trained staff must be a requirement. Lastly, the rules and regulations need to be upgraded and clarified for all types of non-dog and non-cat species at the shelter. For example, the horrendous horse neglect case in 2019 left dozens of feral horses languishing at the fairgrounds for months, while no one in animal services knew what to do with them. Many people argued about their fate before decisive action was taken because there were no known guidelines for handling such a difficult situation. Another example is it has long been rumored that in the past, goats and sheep were given away without record to anyone who wanted them, including people who used them for meat. A very clear policy needs to be put in place that no farm animals adopted from the shelter are to be slaughtered. Adoption forms need to be tailored to horses and farm animals as well as to dogs and cats. Thank you.
Are there any other public comments?
Good morning, Terry McBride. I love the animal control folks. They are amazing. Last time you took my time away when I handed these out, so I'm going to do it while I talk. Today, as I represent, thank you, Stacy, as Robin, as I represent New California State as our committee chair and senator, we are declaring California in a state of constitutional default. The state of California is in constitutional default and does not have constitutional standing as a member state of the Union of States called the United States of America. We, the people, as citizens of the United States living in California, are following the process of West Virginia that successfully restored the Virginia state government after the Wheeling Conventions of 1861. Congress admitted California into the compact, and you need to understand what compact is. It's unbreakable. Of statehood within the United States of America in 1850 because of their constitution ratified for consideration guaranteed Republican form of government. Violation of the United States Constitution, Article 4, Section 4, Clause 1. You know, the Constitution is the law of the land. I handed out 1,500 pocket constitutions between the fair and other things because I want people to know what their rights are, and I really want them to know what the 9th Amendment is. Everybody should look it up. The United States shall guarantee to every state in this union a Republican form of government. Today, California is in a state of free fall at all levels, and that is a fact. This free fall has been orchestrated over the last 170 years by socialists and communists, and we're now nearing the end of their socialist communist plan that clearly demonstrates a design to reduce United States citizens living in California under absolute despotism. Today, this plan has eliminated the three branches of government, created a mono-party legislature which has enabled and empowered the rise of pusillanimous governor turned dictator. A pusillanimous governor whose character is thus marked by every act which may define a tyrant is unfit to be the elected governor of a free people. Likewise, elected, appointed, and regional officials of the state of California whose character is thus marked by every act which may define a tyrant are unfit to be the elected, appointed, and regional officials of a free people. California elections have been corrupt for decades. So let's go back to the paper ballot, shall we? I think that would be lovely. We have a wonderful registrar of voters office there, and I'm pretty sure they could do that. The state of California government officials have established secret election schemes within counties and school districts with the intent to embrace the plans of an authoritarian form of government. Their aim is to eliminate the state of California citizens' Republican form of government. An unconstitutional administrative state now exists in California in direct violation of September 9, 1850 Compact of the United States of America. Look that up. It's really interesting how California became a state. It's a compact, and we are guaranteed our constitutional rights, which have all been completely crushed these last, especially couple of years. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other public comment? Okay, I'm gonna go back to Zoom just to double check.
There is no public comment on Zoom.
Okay, thank you. So with that, if there's no other public comment, then I'm gonna move on to the consent agenda. Consent agenda items are expected to be routine and non-controversial. They will be acted upon by the board at one time without discussion. Any board member or staff member or interested party may request removal of the item from consent for later discussion. Are there any board members that wish to pull a consent agenda item? I'm not seeing any. Okay, I'm gonna move it to the public. Is there any public? Are there any comments on Zoom?
There is not.
Okay, I'll move it back to the board. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved, Madam Chair.
Is there a second? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay. We're gonna take a quick 5-minute, 10-minute break so we can make sure that our next speaker is set up on Zoom and then allow our CEO to get back to his seat. Welcome back. Thank you for your patience. We're going to move on to regular agenda item number 5. And at this time, I'm going to let the clerk read the item out.
Agenda item number 5 is an informational item from the administrative office. Receive a presentation from Mia O'Connell of O'Connell and Dempsey regarding federal advocacy on behalf of Calaveras County and provide guidance on county priorities for the 2022-2023 legislative year.
Good morning, Mia. Good to
Good
see you.
morning. It's good to see you. It's good to see everyone. Thank you so much for taking the time and letting me present today. What I'd like to do today is visit with you on the proposal for the county's federal legislative platform for 2023. And of course, this is the draft platform at this point. I've sketched out a number of draft priorities for the board to consider and to provide direction on based on our scope of work and what we see developing in Congress and at the federal agencies. So today, I will present and discuss these draft priorities for the board's consideration and direction. And without further ado, let me start with that. I think that I want to switch back. Oops, hang on. I think staff has printed out the draft legislative platform for you. And what I thought I would do is summarize it, and then we can open it up for discussion and direction. So based on our current scope of work and what we see developing in Congress and at the agencies, we've outlined 7 priority areas for your consideration. And those include forest management and fuels reduction, transportation funding, especially focusing on State Route 4 Wagon Trail Realignment Project, the eastern segment, flood protection for Cosgrove Creek, FEMA efforts, federal infrastructure funding, Department of Agriculture and other federal funding sources for Calaveras County Health and Human Services Resiliency Center, and water resources. So our first priority, forest management and fuels reduction. The county is now, of course, at the point where we've been successful with a good neighbor agreement for BLM, for hazardous tree removal, and we are embarking on what we think will be a productive longer-term approach through essentially a master good neighbor agreement and a follow-on supplemental project agreement, or a number of them, with the Forest Service for the county to take the lead in forest management and fuels reduction for the Forest Service within the Stanislaus National Forest and those areas associated with the county maintained roads and infrastructure, and to be paid for these efforts, very importantly. We see this really as the future of forest management in our efforts with the federal government. We're working closely with county staff and the Forest Service to expedite final approvals of these agreements to allow us to proceed with the work. And what's so promising is that in the recently enacted Inflation Reduction Act of 2022, Congress included $1.8 billion for the National Forest System for forest restoration and wildfire prevention activities. So we think there's a good future here for us. Let me stop myself here. Shall I continue through the rest of the priorities and then open it up for discussion on all of them? Does that work?
Yes.
Okay, very well. Thank you. The second priority is transportation funding for State Route 4 Wagon Trail Realignment, the eastern segment. While Senator Padilla did request funding for the project in the fiscal year 2023 appropriations bill, there was only one California highway project in the funding bill. Essentially, our California senators focused on transit projects in the transportation arena. However, both Senator Feinstein's office and DOT Secretary's office recommended to us that we pursue the new PROTECT program. And PROTECT stands for Promoting Resilient Operations for Transformative, Efficient, and Cost Savings Transportation Program. It's a new program that was established and funded in the Bipartisan Infrastructure Act. And the PROTECT program provides funds for road safety to increase resilience of transportation systems, including in rural and mountainous regions like ours, and specifically calls out evacuation routes as a priority area for funding. Congress provided $8.7 billion for the program over 5 years. And of that total, $7.3 billion is for formula funding for the states and their transportation agencies such as Caltrans. And $1.4 billion is dedicated to competitive grants under the Protect program. So we have been working with DOT's Secretary's Office to learn of the program schedule, timing for release, public release of opportunity announcements, and we've shared this along with implementation guidance for the Protect program with county staff and CCOG to really focus on the formula funding to Caltrans as the first opportunity, that's the first tranche of money released under this program. And we're working with the Calaveras County team, including CCOG, to support their efforts with Caltrans to fund the Wagon Trail project, focusing on the road's evacuation route as a priority for funding. We expect the Secretary's Office will be announcing the Protect Competitive Grants program, that smaller piece of it, hopefully later in the year, and we'll focus on that opportunity as well for the county. Priority number 3 is flood protection for Cosgrove Creek. Supervisor Tuffanelli, Mr. Osborne, and I have been meeting with the Corps of Engineers Sacramento District on ways to reduce flooding along the creek. We currently are working 2 paths. One, we're working with the Corps as they update their water control manual for New Hogan Reservoir, which really relooks at their own operations. And the Corps has asked us to identify specific flooding dates and impacts along Cosgrove Creek, so that the Corps can then look at their historical record of operations at New Hogan to see if there's a correlation between the Corps' releases of flows at New Hogan and flooding along Cosgrove Creek. We believe there is, and we are building the case right now to show that to the Corps. If we're successful with that, we'll be asking the Corps to change its operations at New Hogan to reduce the flood flows to Cosgrove Creek. We also have a separate track running with the Corps, in that we've advised the Corps that we're going to be moving forward with a sediment removal project at Cosgrove Creek to recapture the capacity of the creek to reduce the flood flows. The Corps has asked us to send them a description of the work with the detail on how the work will be done, where it will be done, etc., for them to determine if the work rises to a level of needing a permit. And we're building that case for them now. If a permit is required, we will ask the Corps to assist in the effort in bringing the resource agencies together to allow us to move forward for that work. Priority number 4 focuses on our efforts with FEMA to secure approvals of the county's claims for project costs in the aftermath of the Butte fire, and more recently, to assist in claims stemming from the major floods in 2017 and 2019. We have worked with the county and Congressman McClintock's office to have the congressman send a letter supporting our last claim to FEMA that was initially denied for time extension. The congressman did send a very strong letter supporting our position and the position of Cal OES to allow for a time extension, and the congressman's office is now following up their letter with FEMA. Hopefully the congressman will prevail on this item, and then we'll move forward to help expedite the county's claims for the flooding in 2017 and 2019. Priority number 5 is focused on federal infrastructure funding. With the passage last year of the $550 billion Bipartisan Infrastructure Act, with the funding lasting for 5 years, there's significant new programs and funding in the areas of transportation, social services, disaster mitigation, forest management, which we'd like to continue to pursue for the county. Presently, we're working with the county to secure Bipartisan Infrastructure Act funds in the arenas of transportation, agriculture for community facilities, fuels reduction, flood protection, disaster mitigation and cleanup, those arenas for the county's projects. Priority number 6 is the Calaveras County Health and Human Services Agency's Resource Resiliency and Navigation Center. As the board knows, this proposal was developed for community members to really help them secure the range of assistance they need, from behavioral health to housing, to COVID response, to disaster relief, etc. Senator Padilla's office did request funding for the planning for this effort, but was not successful against the many other proposals that were well along in the planning and implementation stages. However, in our research of funding potentials, we have identified a number of promising opportunities, including USDA's Community Facilities Direct Loan and Grant Program. This program allows for funding for the planning, design, and construction for community facilities, such as the county's Resiliency Center. After discussions with the county's HHSA staff, we've set an exploratory meeting with USDA staff to discuss the program, the funding opportunity, whether the Resiliency Center would qualify for funding, and what such a funding package would look like. We have that meeting set for Friday, September 23rd with USDA, and we've put together materials for USDA on the Resiliency Center, which they're reviewing now. In addition, we've identified the Department of Health and Human Services Rural Health Network Development Planning Grant as a possible source of funding for some of the county's HHSA needs as well. The final priority is water resources. As we've talked about, we are engaged in discussions with the Corps of Engineers on Cosgrove Creek flooding, but we've not been given direction on any other water resources issued by county leadership. This issue was essentially added as a placeholder at the request of the county's prior CAO earlier in the year. It's unclear whether the board has any direction in this arena for us, but I thought I would include it in the list for your consideration. And with that, I'd like to thank the board for your support of our efforts together and open it up for discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, Mia.
Mhm.
At this time, I want to bring it to the board. Are there any questions that anyone has or clarity from what Mia just walked us through? Supervisor Stopper.
Not so much as a question, but some suggestions when it came to priority 7. Consistently, when we talk about development throughout the county and workforce housing and things of that nature, water resources is an issue when it comes to infrastructure and be able to serve areas across the county in multiple areas. I mean, we have issues in San Andreas and other communities, Valley Springs, also Copperopolis. And I think that this issue is a substantial one. While the county does not service these people when it comes to water or sewer, I mean, we could also work with our partners to support them as they move forward, which you're already working with them regardless, Mia. So just an overall broad statement when it comes to that. You know, some of our priorities should be in line with those, just so that proper development can happen in the future.
Agreed.
Supervisor Garamendi.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, and thank you, Mia. It's good to see you.
It's good to see you too.
I agree with Ben that we need to, we're working with a couple of our water districts, at least one that I know of. And I think that working together, and when they win, we're going to win too. So I think, that shouldn't be our primary focus, but where we can lend and assist, we should lend and assist, because it does, as for all the reasons Ben pointed out, that's wastewater through drinking water and whatever may be in between. The other thing I wanted to really touch on was forest management, fuel reductions. That's great work. We're very excited about the work that's going on with Calaveras Ranger District and our partnership there. So we really want to keep driving on that because we've got momentum. I also think we ought to think about shifting from, reacting to these trees problems to maybe, as we look at both the federal infrastructure bill and forest management. I just came back from a conference where I saw what Sierra County, Butte County, and Lassen County were doing as far as trails. Really trying to shift maybe from just the crisis of trying to deal with the fuels and the trees to how maybe we could get some funding to really improve trails for everybody. OHV, bikes, hikers, horses, all the things we can do to open up our forests, especially where they integrate with our lower lands, BLM and county and private lands would be great. I know that people are talking a lot about recreation and this is a way we could really do as an economic development tool. I don't know what tools you may be able to find, but if we could also add that to the mix of many things you're seeking.
Very good. Thank you.
Are there any other supervisor? Callaway.
I don't know why, just light bulb moment for me on flood protection. But on Murphy's Creek, it's really Angel's Creek, but as it goes through Murphy's
Mhm.
downtown, it floods frequently.
Okay.
And I'm not sure that's part of the water that goes from the source into Maloney's, and more often than not, it floods, and I'm not sure if it has the same issue. It does not have the same issues as Cosgrove Creek, but it has the same concerns that Cosgrove Creek, and I don't know of Murphy's Creek. And it's also involved with Northern California Power Agency because they manage the powerhouse. And then it's just normal flooding, but we frequently have floods there. And I don't
Okay.
just thought about it after all these years.
Typically for the Corps to look at something strictly from a flood control point of view, there's a base metric that they use, which is what's the amount of the flow, to kind of draw a bright line between localized flooding that's considered more of a nuisance versus flooding that there's a federal interest. And I think it's usually about 800 cubic feet a second. It has to be the flow. But anyway, we can certainly take a look at that to see what kind of range of issues and the amount of flow and where that's coming from. Happy to take a look at that.
Sorry, Mayor. I'll try and get more data and send to you.
Okay. All right.
Thank
Very
you.
well. Thank you. Thank you.
I do want to piggyback on what Supervisor Garamendi said on the forest and the trails. We have the Arnold Rim Trail, which is predominantly on Forest Service land. And it's a real role model for a trail for equestrian mountain bikers, hikers. So, yeah, we could use more of those. And I have to say, I am extremely happy with the Calaveras Ranger District. So to give them a plug whenever they've been good partners in the Evans Pass corridor.
Excellent. Thank you.
Supervisor, Marita.
Sorry, Gary, did you want to go? This morning on my way to board, I was listening to NPR and they were talking with somebody from Puerto Rico and their relationship with FEMA and how, what was I doing? Some note, how they over police items and they still have not settled up with Hurricane Maria. And we're still talking about the Butte fire.
One last claim. Yep.
And I mean, is there something that we can or we should be doing as boards really across the United States to change FEMA's, well, as Puerto Rico said, their bureaucratic policies, my favorite word. Sorry, counselor. I mean, it was really sad listening
yeah,
to what
it
they were
is.
saying this morning. And And here we're talking about something going back to 2015.
Yeah. Puerto Rico, for better or worse, is in a class of its own in terms of the state of infrastructure, the enormity of the issues, the lack of, how do I put it? Regular maintenance and kind of the things that we would normally do to keep systems running. They have such financial issues. So all of that comes together in a terrible way when they get these storms, and it's hard for them to react quickly. That's at least been the history in Puerto Rico. So they've got, I think the federal government really does understand a lot of their issues, but the partnership is tough there to on the local side to keep everything moving forward and to, you know, submit the claims in a timely way and to make sure that there's a lot of equity across the island. So they've got their own sets of issues. I would say the federal government has really leaned forward, and I think will continue again to lean forward to help Puerto Rico. But it's a tremendous challenge locally.
Supervisor Toffenali.
Good morning, Mia. How are you?
Good morning. I'm
Well,
good.
it's
How are
after-
you?
I'm good. It's afternoon, I guess, there.
Just a little bit.
And I want to thank you for your work with Cosco's Creek and the other projects here. I have some more information I'll be forwarding to you later today on Cosco.
Great, thank you.
And it's very good information, so it may help. I want to talk.
Fantastic.
Yeah, I want to talk a little bit about Wagon Trail.
Uh-huh.
I'm not sure if you know exactly where we are on phase 2. I have some information here that was sent out by our Public Works Director yesterday. And,
Okay.
and we had received $4 million from California Transportation Commission for this phase 2 to get us into the design plans and specifications for the next phase, which would give us a shovel-ready project. And that is what I want to talk a little bit about. If we have a shovel-ready project and we go after some of this 1.4 billion in competitive grants, that would certainly help us in competitive with those grants that we have this project. Is that something that you could help us with in those competitive grants, or is that something that we have to do individually?
Yeah, I can certainly help when we get to the competitive grants, but the lion's share, 9/10 of the money out of that 8.7 has gone directly to Caltrans.
Yeah.
And so what I'm trying to do is give our team, Calaveras County and CCOG, as much information as it comes out in terms of implementation guidance. What are the priorities? What is the state asked to be looking at? What kinds of things are important to DOT in allocating those funds? I mean, it is most of the money is going that way. I am on point for when the competitive grants come out, which is a much smaller amount, but still we're going to go after it for sure. But DOT decided that the best way to get the dollars out the door, and I think it makes sense, the most efficient way was to put most of that into the formula funds. And California, of course, does very, very well. They got the second largest allocation for a state. They'll be getting 631 million just for this one program over the next 5 years. Those are funds that we should be competing for at Caltrans, especially given the fact that the priority for this program, one of the leading priorities is, hey, we need to look at evacuation routes to make sure they're sustainable, reliable, and can get people out of these disasters. And so I am trying to do everything in my power to make sure I am there and available to help our team, to make sure we can access those funds that Caltrans has for our project. I mean, there's plenty of money. We fit the profile. Whatever we need to do, I'm more than happy to help support that effort. So that's tranche number one, because those monies are out, at least the first year of those. And that's really where, our focus is and should be. And well, it's a state issue. The funds are coming from the feds. Those are federal funds under kind of federal criteria. That's where our first effort should be. And then hopefully later in the year, DOT and the Secretary's office will be releasing the announcement for the federal opportunity for the competitive grants. And yes, I am more than happy to identify when that comes out, help prioritize it. I'm not the one who's going to write the grant, but I can certainly, because I know you got some folks there, look at it for sharpening up and thinking through what DOT is looking for. And then also, of course, sharing the fact with DOT and the Secretary's office that we are finally in the wheelhouse for something that fits us perfectly, and to raise the priority there, and then work with the congressmen and hopefully our senators to raise the priority of our competitive grant once that comes out for public dissemination. But that will probably be later this year as the state works through the funds that they've already received from DOT.
Thank you for that information. I was just trying to look at all different types of funding if we're available to us for that project. Because it's going to be, by the time we get to it, it's going to be very costly. We had estimates originally from a few years ago of about $54 million to $55 million for that phase, but I think it's probably going to be more than that by the time we get the shovel-ready project and we start seeking funds for it. So, because of the cost of everything going up. So, so I'm just trying to look at every pocket of money that we can look at to get any funds for. So
me too. Same here. Exactly. Thank you for that.
Yeah. And then one other thing on the water resources, and I agree with what Supervisor Stopper and Gary Mendy said. However, there's some issues going on in California due to the drought and some of the groundwater authority here in California, and the governor has formed 16 what they call GSAs, or groundwater sustainability agencies. And they're charged with recharging the groundwater that's being pumped out through agriculture or commercial purposes or whatever. And we are one of them in the western edge of our county. And we are going to be charged with coming up with projects that will continuously recharge that groundwater. And so there's a lot of different grants that could be coming available, but because we're one of the smaller ones compared to the valley area, our competitiveness may not be as much as what it would be against those in the valley. So if we're going to go after some funds, and this would help other water agencies that are drawing out of that also to serve the public, and we're talking about partnering, we'd certainly like to look for some money or lobby for some money for some of these projects. And I think we just had a meeting on Friday with CCWD and our GSA, which Stanislaus County is part of. There was 2 projects that CCWD was introducing to our groundwater plan, sustainability plan. And I can forward a copy of what those plans are, so you know what we're looking at, and then we could come up with what the cost of those were, so you know what the money we're looking for to put these projects in place to do our part on what we're mandated to do with the state. I can forward that information to you.
That'll be great. Yeah, that sounds like another teaming effort with Calaveras County Water District. That would be great to improve the base of support. As you suggest, small county, it's nice to team up and to get that support a little bit wider. So yeah, I'd be happy to look at that. That sounds like a good idea.
Okay, thank you.
Are there any other board comments or questions from you? My turn, Mia.
Yes.
I'm gonna piggyback after Marita regarding the Angels Creek going through Murphy's Park. A lot of that also has to do with the train reaction of the hydro facility by Utica Water and Power, which is directly right up the road. So when there's an influx in the flumes, there's the release of that to keep the forebay at levels that are appropriate. And thus with the compounding of the rain, it just floods, it can flood that area.
Yeah.
And so I think it's just not just NCPA, it's also Utica Water and Power with the hydro. So it's just a compounding and what the flumes can consume after it leaves the Murphy's Park area, because the flume can only handle so much flow. But when there's that much flooding, it can overflow the flumes, and there's flooding along the way down all the way to the city of Angels. So there's multiple domino effects on that one. Which I think is a good idea with Marita, considering that, especially as growth happens up in the Murphy's area. Number 5, the federal infrastructure funding.
Yeah.
I feel like I'm a broken record, but bridges. We've continuously talked about this over the years. Does this cover maintenance for bridges? I know we have some issues with the current bridges with needing to do major infrastructure, possible replacement of the bridge, especially down over Lake Tulloch. But in the meantime, what about maintenance? Does that cover any
Typically, maintenance is left to the locals after, the feds hopefully contribute to the construction of it. But, this is an area that we haven't really spent time on. So you're thinking about maintenance for some particular bridges? Is there somebody you can send me some info on
I used to
this?
have 3. Now I'm down to 1. So one of them ended up in Marita's district. So Burns Bay, Steveno, and Payette Bay. And Payette Bay and O'Burns, I believe there is agreement with Tuolumne County, but over the last couple of years, counterparts over in Tuolumne and I have been talking about how to maybe help alleviate some of the costs of what we're looking at, even though there is some saying that it's just too much for one entity.
Okay. Well, hopefully somebody from Public Works can give me some background on these bridges so we can kind of understand whether or not they would be eligible.
Okay. And if there's a eligibility for total replacement over Burns Bay, that would be great. But I'm gonna start with what I feel we can reach, but I'm gonna aim at the bar a little higher if there's an opportunity.
So can you identify exactly which bridges we're talking about, or can somebody?
Burns Ferry Bridge. Burns Ferry Bridge. Steveno, which I feel like that's more Caltrans, but there are some issues there. And then the other big one is Payette Bay Bridge.
How do I spell that? Payette Bay?
Payette, like the Payette.
Oh, okay.
Bay.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep. Marita.
All right.
Wasn't the agreement years ago that Tuolumne would take care of one of the bridges and Calaveras the other? So former CAO of Tuolumne County, what's Tuolumne doing about taking care of their bridge?
Yeah, well, I'll just say that was the understanding that O'Burns Ferry would be Calaveras' responsibility, but Parrott's Ferry would be Tuolumne County's responsibility.
And?
Just clarifying history. I don't know. Darn that Tuolumne County.
And there is that understanding, Supervisor Callaway. It just, in the talks over the last couple of years with various board members over there, they're seeing the same challenges. And is it more of a regional approach? It is a benefit. And I think it really highlighted after the Washington fire, the Aurora fire, just needing to make sure that there's access points for both counties for evacuation as well, and just seeing the vulnerability that happened during that time. So that I think we each recognize that we have responsibilities, but we'll make more headway if we collaborate a little bit better together. So. And then I just echo what Gay said about the Highway 4 wagon trail. I think, you and I went to the congressman's office in May, and I think it's still the same. It's a unique situation in Calaveras where we have all the players at the table, and we're here to support each other to see that project through. And if we continue to keep that collaboration, where that, as Gay was saying, we're ready to go. We're all in it together, and we want to see this successful.
Yep, absolutely. And the funds are flowing to the state. So I really want to make sure we're doing everything in our power collectively, first and foremost, to focus on Caltrans. They've got a huge amount of money for a program that we fit beautifully within. So that's our first focus. Competitive grant, great. We'll go there when it opens up. It's not going to be open up for a while. We got to go when Caltrans is in its infancy on this program with the cash they have. So I want to increase our efforts there and, do whatever I have to do to help that.
Thank you. Are there any other board comments or questions before I turn it over to the public? No? Okay, at this time, and I'm going to start with Zoom. Are there any public comments on Zoom?
There is no public comments on Zoom.
Okay. Are there any public comment in the room? Good morning, Ralph.
Good morning, Supervisors. Hi, Mia. My name is Ralph Copeland. I'm from Copperopolis. And I just threw this together. I wasn't expecting to talk. Strange, huh? Okay, I agree with Supervisor Fullendorf. Copperopolis has a huge transit issue. It's the dangerous O'Burns Ferry Bridge. The bridge is extremely antiquated for the heavy truck traffic from the loggers to the rock quarries. Please get the ball rolling on the O'Burns Ferry Bridge replacement at Lake Tulloch. Also, we are desperately close to an infrastructure meltdown. Replacing the aging water and sewer systems, especially in Copperopolis, should be kept as a priority. I also agree with Supervisor Stopper. Being that Mia and O'Connell and Dempsey are lobbyists for CCWD, I'm assuming our county consultants work hand in hand with the county and CCWD. It's also good to hear Congressman McClintock is working for additional funding. But let me define earmarks here for a second. OMB defines federal earmarks as funds provided by Congress for projects or programs where the congressional direction circumvents the merit-based or competitive allocation process. But here's the problem. The county and CCWD has been frustrated with Senator or Congressman McClintock because he is against these earmarks. But again, it's good to hear that he's proactive in these other issues. I would like you to continue to work on our congressmen for earmarks and also our bridge and our water and sewer infrastructure. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ralph. Are there any other public comment? Seeing none, I'll bring it back. Mia, do you feel like you've got enough feedback from the board?
I think so. I'm going to follow up with staff on a couple of these to get some more details, but I think what I'm hearing is the priorities are pretty much as we laid them out, with maybe a little bit of fleshing out, perhaps under the water resources area. So what I'll do is take this direction back and refine that draft and get it in final draft and send that to staff for your consideration.
Does that sound like good for everyone? Yep, okay, I'm getting nods. Okay, staff, you have any feedback or anything that the board need to consider before we?
No, I'll just echo the thoughts about working with utilities and the infrastructure, because that's what it's going to take. There's such a cost in keeping those old utilities, the existing ones, up to snuff. But then we need to extend them out in order to have new areas for development. And it's almost like a new era of revitalization that's necessary. And it's not just here, it's all over the country, but we're focusing here in Calaveras, of course. I do want to ask about so I understand the Paris Ferry Bridge. Is it the concern of the dip in it? Is that?
There's also a foundation, the columns, and then also the trucks coming up and down from
Not
to the
Paris Ferry,
corner.
excuse me.
You mean, I knew it, yeah, a bunch.
Burns. I know that's a major span coming
Yeah.
across. So that's going to be an expensive project.
Yeah.
Okay, well, back to Parrots Ferry. I know that there was, I don't know if you know, that's a hollow underneath in the midst of that bridge span. It's hollow and there's large cables in there. And there was an effort to retension those. And that was done, I think, just before they turned the project over from the contractor. You know, this was through Caltrans, I think, or no, it wouldn't have been. It would have been the Corps, I believe. But that was from the bridge structure itself. So if there's more, I'll just have to get up to speed, on it, so I can talk to my counterparts across the river.
Cross on your way home.
Yeah.
Hey, anything else? Okay. Are you good, Mia?
I think so. Thank you so much.
Thank you,
Great
Mia.
to see everyone.
Thank you, Mia.
Thank you, Mia.
Thank you for your support. Great working with you and seeing everyone. Take care.
You too.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Next, we'll move on to regular agenda item number 6. Clerk, can you please read out?
Item number 6 is an informational item from Public Works. Receive a list of recommended projects for the Calaveras Council of Governments fiscal year 2022-2023. Call for projects and provide direction to staff regarding the same.
Mr. Patringer, do you want to come up to the table or do you want to stand out there? It's up to you. Where are you more comfortable?
This will be okay here.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay.
So we met about a month or so ago to discuss the call for projects from the Council of Governments and the idea of preparing some projects for that call for projects. The board asked us to come back with a list of projects for consideration. We went through various the things that we're working on, and we have come back with a list of these projects. One of these projects was a relatively recent addition. It's number 13 Highway 49 Red Hill Road, but that was in its infancy. It requires a little bit more evaluation, so we're not ready at this time to move forward with that one. So we're not going to consider that at this point for this call for projects, but the others, we can consider those. And I'd like to let you know though that the top, I would say the top 3 or 4 of these projects are ones that are much further along in the pipeline. So they would be prime candidates, pretty highly probability that they would be successful in obtaining grant money. But at this point, then I'll turn it back to you for your discussion and direction on which projects you would wish us to move forward with. I've also brought Kelly and Jen, who have worked on some of these projects. If there are any questions, any specific questions in regards to any of these projects.
Okay. I've got a tie between two supervisors, so who wants to vote Sambo? Okay, we're going with Gary.
I'll be relatively short here. I know where we are in the valleys, the first two. Pretty much we stay on top of with each other and where that is and what's going on, funding and so forth. Just the other day at COG, I mentioned Rule 20A on that project and bringing something to the board to commit some of those funds that are left that aren't committed for that project to make sure that telephone poles and everything else is underground on the safe route to school project. So it opens up some of the areas for the kids to travel. But I'm curious in item number 3, the Olive Orchard and Garner intersection improvement project. I don't know where we're at on that. And if it's in progress, are we doing engineering on it right now? Design, where are we on that project?
Okay, let me ask Kelly Zanizer to come up and debrief you a little bit more on that project.
Good morning. On the Olive Orchard project, we are in what we call the program development or project development phase, which is we've done a lot of preliminary, really preliminary engineering work. And we've actually forwarded that information to Caltrans because it is the state highway and we were looking for direction from them, what our next steps would be. And actually, I think we attended a meeting last week with Caltrans and they have shown great amount of interest in that project. So the hope is that they can take that initial project development work that we've already put in utilizing the Valley Springs benefit base and dollars, and they can hopefully take on that project. Not promising anything at this point, but they did show a lot of interest in it. So that's where we are.
So
right now.
we're looking, obviously it's a highway and it's 2 county roads that meet there. So is it a co-project between, would it be a co-project between Calaveras and Caltrans? And who would take the lead on it? And then are RIM funds committed to that project? Because I know there's a lot of development down there. It's paid a lot into RIM funds.
Right.
And there was some controversy at one time over something that happened, but I want to make sure we're going forward on this project because a lot of my constituents use that intersection along with Ben's. And it's been in the works for a long time.
Yes.
And it was supposed to have been done by, well, the history on it, we won't go into, but I just want to make sure that who's going to have the lead, are RIM funds committed to it, and what, do we have any time frame on it at all?
Okay. Most likely at this point, we're the lead and the funds identified for that intersection are the Valley Springs Benefit Basin funds.
Okay, all right.
Those funds were used for the preliminary engineering work. So we could submit those studies to Caltrans. They're at this point evaluating what we can do with that intersection. Most likely the discussion centers around a left turn pocket. Subsequent to those discussions with Caltrans, we'll see if they wish to have us proceed with the project similar to how we've done Wagon Trail, or if they'll take it on. We don't know that part yet, but hopefully as soon as we find that out, we'll come back and let you know.
Okay, can you just stay closely in touch with them and so we can move the project along?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
If I may just follow up on that real quick, I've been bringing it up for the last 4 years. Actually, Terry Bailey brought it up in 2002. It was made a priority in 2002. So I mean, getting past planning and moving forward on it is very high on my priority. There isn't many things that the county can do for my constituents in my district, but roads is one we can. So, very high on my priority list, along with the issues on Garner.
Yes, sir.
Can I follow up on this one, please? Go into where Supervisor Toffenelli asked about where this project is at. Are you going to be able to make the project timeline for the funding cycles? Because my concern is that the timing of this project to meet with where you say we're at with it to get the funding, so we're not having to do what we had to do with last year's fund and loan them out to Sacramento County. So will this project meet the readiness to meet the multi-fiscal year?
That is the goal for these ones. With the
Okay.
preliminary engineering done on Highway 26, we pretty much have a pretty good step forward. The only delay here would be the response from Caltrans. That's always been a difficulty with this intersection. With this intersection improvement project, we presented information to them. It was quite some time ago. And they recognized that there was information presented to them. I think it was, what did they say, 8 years ago or something that and we're still kind of kicking this around with those guys. But they've changed a few things internally. They have an ambassador program within Caltrans that they seem to be a bit more responsive to some of our discussions and our requests. It was with this ambassador program or through this ambassador program that we approached Caltrans on a couple of the issues that Supervisor Fallendorf raised to us. They were able to turn around a response to us very quickly. So they seem to be in a mode of trying to be a bit more responsive to us. And we're hoping that that method of operation from their end will help us to get this project through. The big thing with this Highway 26 Olive Orchard Garner intersection project, if we were to move forward with that, they're going to want us to obtain an encroachment permit. And for them to issue this encroachment permit for our work sometimes is not a simple encroachment permit. It's not the same thing like putting up the signs. They're gonna want to review the plans and so forth. And that's where where time sinks right there with that effort. But we'll just have to stay on top of those guys.
Gary?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Robert, I understand, but in this particular instance, I think the landowners on the Olive Orchard side, I know, and I think Ben knows them, and the other one would be the HOA. And I'm not sure if we're gonna go through the whole thing, but I think it may be a little bit easier to get the easement rights on this project because those people have known this in the work since 2002. The other thing is, Caltrans has been very responsive, and COG has an October meeting coming up here in the next couple of weeks, and I will bring it up to Caltrans at COG and say that it's our priority. So hopefully that helps to move it along and get their stamp or their design or whatever it needs to do so we can move forward on the project.
So to be clear with this project, we already have an engineering firm on board.
Well,
And
that's
they've
great.
already, they're the people that have prepared these preliminary plans that we've submitted forward. So it's a matter of trying to get through the Caltrans process, and we'll turn that back to the engineering firm to complete designs.
So that's good news. We do have an engineering firm on.
Thank you, Robert. Jack?
Thank you. My first question is kind of follow up to what's going on here. We talk about county money for 26 Olive Orchard. Before any of us were on this board, I think 2016, the board changed the requirements of the developer. Was that what this money was supposed to be for?
Yes.
So we waived $1 million and now we get to go back and fill it. Not we, but prior board.
Part of the agreement for all of your states for that development, you put that money in the bond. I'm sorry. That money was placed in a bond. It is a requirement for his approval of Olive Orchard Estates development, which is off between Burson Road and the highway.
Right.
And so, yeah, it was given back prior to this being.
Prior to anybody on this board, but that's interesting. Thank you.
There's a long story.
There, for $1 million, I'm sure there's a really long one. Thank you. Robert, my question is, I appreciate seeing the railroad flat guardrails on there. That is now that it's a super highway, it's pretty scary. going around that corner. My question is on number 8, Regional Bicycle Pedestrian and Trails Master Plan Update. We have in here bicycle users, pedestrians and hikers. Is this the type of project that can be used, as I was talking about earlier, for looking at recreational opportunities throughout the county for all trails, OHV, horse, bicycle, hikers? Is that a place that California, I know under Prop 68, they've got a lot of recreational funds. Is this maybe where those things might meld?
That's a good possibility, yes.
Because if we could find the money, and I know Supervisor Stauber's been talking about this for
Right.
years.
I'm just one thing. I think that a lot of these monies, when it comes to the regional bicycle pedestrian trails master plan update, have to interconnect with major thoroughfares. Am I correct? In certain instances on some of it, but not all of it?
No, with the
Okay.
plan, first, the Council of Governments would probably be a great, probably a leader, a major participant in the plan. But past plans have looked at everything, all the roads, just where there's connectivity. We've had plans within Murphy's, and they've looked at some of the smaller roads. So it's not limited to just, for example, major collectors. It would be everywhere.
Well, I would certainly encourage you as you talk to COG, two of the members are here on the board, so kind of talking, but that we really try to push this. When they did, we were looking at the bike races in places like Downeyville and the amount of people that it brings in. So you connect Murphy's and Angels and Moke Hill and West Point and Copperopolis all together, a real comprehensive plan could be a really good project for the COG to take a look at, because we're going to need money and we're going to need a champion to pull everybody together.
There was one prepared, what was it, something like 2015? But now we're 7 years later or so, and it may be time to take another look at that and expand it a little bit now that there's a different need or some, with these OHV areas and different trails that you've discussed. It may be a chance to expand that plan to consider these other things.
And one of the things, Pat McGreevy 12, 15 years ago mapped almost all the trails up country and brought them all together. And so a lot of this work already exists. We just need to amalgamate it and market it. And I think that could be a really nice merging of both what the county does and COG does, economic development, and Caltrans can play a piece on this, because we're going to get a lot more bang for the buck doing a single lane trail than we are building a bike route on Highway 4, which is going to be enormously expensive.
But if I may, let me add a little something on the bike facility for the Wagon Trail project. The design of that project includes 8 feet shoulders. And those shoulders are relatively wide enough that they would, if someone wants to be riding their bike on an 8-foot shoulder, they could do it a whole lot easier there than on some of our roads that have maybe 1 foot, if that.
Right.
So there will be an opportunity there for that.
Right, and that's great. I don't want to exclude everybody. Trails have to be for everybody. And so what they're doing with Caltrans and Highway 4 is great. I just don't want to be myopic and only look at street bikes, which is where the major advocacy efforts are coming from. But, we have to think broader as a county.
If I remember right, in the 2015 plan, the Arnold Rim Trail was one of the projects identified in that. And because it is in those plans, then we're able to look for funding to actually make the improvements.
Right. I want Arnold Rim Trail, that kind of quality trail everywhere, because that is a real boon and it brings a lot of tourists who like to have $5,000 mountain bikes climbing up and down those hills. Those are good tourists. Second thing I had was we keep running into an effort as we're developing south on Highway 49. Caltrans is always calling, won't let anything happen there without a left-hand turn lane or a roundabout or some sort of traffic thing. I would like COG to take a look at that as well, because otherwise, I mean, I don't know where we go. We're never going to get anything built at the airport or the other side of the roads. I know you've been through this with me, Robert, so.
Right, their solution was to put a roundabout there, and they're waiting for developers to fund all of the improvements. And that's where the developers don't have the funds for such a thing, especially if they hope to put in some workforce housing. Now, how does that pencil out? So somehow we're gonna have to get Caltrans to put some money in for some of the improvements that they say are necessary at that intersection.
I would just like COG to consider that as a possible project going forward. Trails for everyone, bikes. That's it. Just, thank you.
Thank you, Jack.
I will say
Okay.
this to Jack. Caltrans is going to do some improvements on 49 through town, starting next year, or maybe it moved off to 24, but it's part of the shop project. And I think we've had some conversations at COG on not only there at Pool Station Road. So there was some comment periods that we can continue to go down that road before they start their project. So we will have those discussions.
Thank you, Gary. I know you've been working on this for a better part of a decade, so appreciate the fire.
Thank you.
Hold it. Yes, Craig.
Just for clarification, so is this a project you want inserted in here or just something to be worked on as we move forward in general?
I'm only one vote, so Gary's worked on this longer than I have. Gary, what do you think?
I don't think it needs to, because I think that will be going primarily with COG and Caltrans as we go through that work. So as we start approaching, I will bring it up again to COG that we need to do something, since we're going to be doing work on Highway 49 through there, and they're completely going to take and grind up. So there's going to be a lot of work going through there and redo that whole road because of the crown in it. We can continue to have those discussions on those intersections, especially the Mount Ranch Road intersection, as we go forward.
Yeah, thanks. I just know that when the last plans I saw from Caltrans, they stopped at Mountain Ranch Road. So
No, it's going up past Toyanza, just past Toyanza.
So we're right there.
Yeah,
So
we're
just
right
bring them across the line, and it'd be great to have that in there. Otherwise, we're never going to, where else will we go?
I agree.
Ms. Callaway.
Robert.
Yes.
Okay, number 9, Murphy's Parking and Electric Charging Project. The only place that I can see garnering more parking spots is at the Black Bart parking area, or Murphy, whatever we call it these days. That's county-owned property. And I'm hoping we can at least garner 8 to possibly 10 more parking spots on county property. And of course, the electric charging stations, as my colleagues have talked about. There is some of the Murphy's in lieu parking fee that could be used for that. So I'm not really clear, unless we can find funding to purchase land in and around the Murphy's area, excluding that. I don't know where we're going. All the property is private. The only public parking is what the county owns. So yeah, I'd like to see that. Number 10, Murphy's Sidewalk and Outdoor Dining Plan. We are going to be talking about the dining plan on the next agenda item. I would like to see sidewalks where there are no sidewalks. The sidewalks that exist now, if I'm not mistaken, aren't they owned by the property owner?
That's correct.
So we could not use public money to fix those, could we? Or could we?
The right of way goes to the face of the building, but the maintenance responsibility of the sidewalk belongs to the property owners, the business owners.
Right, so we could not use public money to replace or improve the existing sidewalks, correct?
And then there's also the difficulty with the ADA requirements, because once you start messing around in there, you start having to build everything to ADA requirements, and that with the elevations of the road and the entrances to the shops will be that will be a very almost impossible job to do there.
But where there are no sidewalks, that could be part of that project.
Yes, the area where there are no sidewalks is relatively flat, so that has a
Correct.
better chance of improvement.
So when you discuss replacement or installation, is that what we're talking about? Because I don't know where we would replace sidewalks that are not privately owned.
Right, we couldn't do a replacement of any
Existing
right
sidewalks.
existing, no, but in those areas where there are gaps, we've thought about that area by the little bridge, trying to figure out what we can do to make that a little safer with even with lights. Because that whole area is difficult to get across, and
Well, You mean down near the Bottomley and Millier
yeah,
Winery?
right.
So we could give it to the Boy Scouts. They could do it quicker than we could.
They sure did.
Like, yes, okay. The other one that's critical is item 12, the pedestrian bridge project over the
Mhm.
creek that floods because of Utica. That really is gonna, if that's not done, if we can't get funding of that through the COG, the county's going to have to find a way to replace that
Mhm.
or to fix that.
Yes.
So for me, that's really a high priority. And then I have two others. Of the left turn lane into Douglas Flat. I know it's a state highway, but we've had several incidents at left turn into Douglas Flat. And there's a lot of residents and a senior community in there. I'd like that to be considered or pursued. Caltrans told me no years ago, but no can be changed to a maybe and maybe to a yes. And the other, I'm really not clear, but it's significant, is the paving within that community in Douglas Flat. The roads are in pretty bad shape. And I'm not sure if that would qualify under COG funding, but it's an old community. And it would take probably any allocation given to District 3. It would probably take us a few years before we could even fill a pothole somewhere else. Okay,
Yes.
those are the two I'm adding. Thank you, Mr. Package.
Thank you.
Mr. Pedro.
Okay, so same question. For a lot of the comments that, is it okay if I call you Marita? So Supervisor Callaway, that she, mentioned earlier, that's just clarification. A lot of those Murphy's things, as we've been in communication about those, but now these other two, the left turn lane on Douglas Flat, paving the Douglas Flat community, are those things that the full board wants to have added to this list in response to the call of projects?
My concern is the amount of work that has been done, if any, already to even qualify to be considered on the check boxes. That's my only concern, but is it something that maybe Public Works can start on to prepare for the next round? I would be open to that, but I don't
Yes.
believe it would meet the qualifications under the CMAQ.
You are correct. at this
Okay.
point, but I wanted to put it out there because it will take Supervisor like Coverty a while before he figures that out. And, and I would just like it out there for maybe the next funding next funding opportunity.
Next year. I don't have an issue with that. That's fine. The only concerns I would have is she mentioned COG funding for the paving of Douglas Fast roads. I don't think there's any funding that those are private roads or county owned roads. And it's not really have to do with highways and byways and if it was a project that had to do with CMAQ funds, which is a clean air, like the bridge over the creek you're talking about, that could possibly qualify. But just paving Douglas flat roads with COG money, I don't think it would qualify. The other one, the left-hand turn pocket line that you're talking about, I certainly would meet qualifications for that.
Are there any other comments from board members?
So I'm taking that as those are, next cycle type projects?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, if there's no one else, I'm gonna start on my list. Thank you for removing number 13. Thank you for removing number 13. I appreciate that. I think there still needs to be some more work similar to Supervisor Callaway's issues up at Douglas Flat. One of the concerns I have on item number 9 for downtown Murphy's parking and electric charging project, this is saying that this project would include a comprehensive plan. The COG is already on the process of doing a charging plan. So would this be saying that the county does not want to be included in that current COG plan? Or do you want to just focus on, we already have like the Murphy's library and putting actual charging stations there to get started? Because I think there might be a conflict when we submit this, and I want to make sure we're very clear to the COG to be competitive that we're not duplicating any planning work.
Certainly. We included this project, just understanding that we have a need for charging stations. We have a need for parking. So it just seemed like a natural nexus. But of course, I would not want to preclude us from applying for any opportunities with the COG. I mean, absolutely. They are doing a very comprehensive study of the electric charging stations throughout the entire county. So whatever comes out of that, I think we could use that information and piggyback that into our project if we're going to add parking, just kind of make recommendations about where we would like to see those charging stations be installed. But definitely working in concert with them.
Okay, thank you for clarifying that. Pope Street. Why is it, I'm just surprised with the amount of work that Pope Street has done over the last couple of years. How did that not qualify under the CMAQ?
It's possible that it would. Right now, there's an ATP grant application for a lot of the improvements on the piece that's missing from that grant. There's a connection between, let's say where the CDF building is, that's county-owned property, connecting over to a cross-government center to get to the facility here that will take us to a library. That the plan was always to have direct connection all the way through.
Okay.
And there is a piece right now that is there's a gap right there.
And I guess that's what how would that not qualify under the CMAQ funding to tie that up and wrap it, make it all connect?
That would be the hope, to put it in for perhaps some CMAQ funding for that.
Okay, well, it's in, I think it would be wise to maybe relook at that, because if it could rise to the occasion as a project already pretty much fully funded, when we look at the other project that we could be competing against, it might get more check marks next to it. And that's why I'm looking at this. I mean, we're putting out, we have all these great ideas and we have these plans, but I don't want to short ourselves with our counterparts and what we're going to be competing against. And I want to make sure that we have several ready projects that are going to get wrapped up or complete already shovel projects that need gaps filled in with other money.
The difficulty is we don't have a result on the ATP project. There is no, we won't get an outcome on that ATP project until I think it's in October that we'll find out whether that ATP projects get funded or not.
Okay, or maybe we can look more into that before.
Yeah, I knew it wasn't on here and I didn't really have a problem at this time with it because there's some issues going on Pope Street. And I am meeting with the residents, several residents on Pope Street here later in the week to go over their concerns about the street. A lot of them are not interested in widening it up because they lose parking places. I mean, there's a lot of issues on Pope Street before we move forward on this project. The whole idea was to make a safe route to school for the kids, not only on Pope Street, but a couple other streets, California Street. And so there's still some things that need to be straightened out here and the residents on board before we move forward on this project. And I know it probably won't be in this round in a position, but we can look at other funding sources other than this call for project for
Right.
COG to
Well-
get that completed. I just don't want to put it in here prematurely. I mean, we could, I'm all in favor of putting it in here, but I'm not sure where it's going to be in the next couple of years.
That is
I'm bringing up Pope Street, and this is why, Robert, because we de-obligated over $100,000.
We did.
This would have been the perfect project to reprogram to wrap it up. And so I want to be mindful as we move forward, so we don't find ourselves like we were 6 months ago, de-obligating funds when we had projects in front of us that would qualify under the CMAQ. And so I want to keep it on the forefront of everybody's mind of what else is out there that we have, that we can be proactive, and whether or not they get picked up in this round. But as this round goes and we have potential leftover money, we've got something ready to go that would qualify under CMAQ. And so we don't have to put it on the list. It's just, I want to make a point of, I want to make sure we are talking about everything that's going on in the county so we can be ready to go to take advantage of any other leftover funds in the future.
there is a slight difficulty in trying to utilize funds. You know, we bring in a project under budget, there's some money left. It's a bit difficult to just say we're going to slide that money over to another project. There has to be quite a bit. Perhaps COG can do that for us, but there's a lot that has to go into it. The scope of work has to change. Others have to approve it. So there's a whole process that would have to happen. It's not an automatic thing that we can just take leftover funds that are, these are federalized funds. CMAQ is federal. So you'd have to go through quite a bit of a process to move it over.
Okay.
And Robert, I don't disagree with you, but those funds in this particular instance came from COG. COG should have been notified that we had this excess money left over, and we could have redirected that, I believe, in a timely manner to different projects. So I don't want to get into that with you. It happened, fine. We just know going forward that it won't happen again. And you guys did a tremendous job bringing that project under budget. I commend you and your group for doing that. That was absolutely wonderful. Because that generally doesn't happen where you have funds left over on a project. You actually usually sometimes coming back asking for funds to finish it off. So that I don't want to admonish you guys at all. It's just, we need to make sure that we notify COG if it ever happens again, that we have this money left over. Do you want to re-obligate it somewhere else to another project? And, you know, I'm in favor of adding Pope Street in here. If the rest of the board is, if we get to the position during this funding round that we're in a position to do some of the engineering or anything else going forward on it, or do some part of the project, I'd be more than happy to have this in if the rest of the board's in agreement on it.
Supervisor Toffenelli, excuse me, and to be clear, what we're talking about is that little gap that is between the ATP project and the existing infrastructure here on Government Center.
I understand.
The other question I had was number 5 and number 7. So since we're already in phase 1, going into phase 2 of the wagon realignment, and since Caltrans is already at the table, would that, could those two be combined because they're all off the same highway? Or do they really need to be separate? And if they do, then I would like to see number 7 moved up after Highway 26, Olive Orchard. Because it's, as you mentioned earlier, the widening of the road is already going to be there. And it would align with Caltrans' priority with their new bike plan for District 10 to put in more bike roads. And I know Supervisor Garamendi isn't in favor of road bikes, but the roads are already widened and it seemed like a natural addition to a project that's already under construction.
Madam Chair, if I
Yeah.
might, first off, I like.
I'm just giving you a hard time.
But I guess I don't understand. Maybe I misunderstood. Is this numbered system a listing of priorities or are they all equal priorities? Because if that's the case, then I'd like to revisit my comments earlier. So are we prioritizing this?
Okay, so this is just a list. Okay, I interpreted it as these are what you're gonna put when you send it to COG. This is number 1. Okay, copy that. Thank you.
I have an issue with that because some of these have been made priorities in the past. And then if we just let it go as a list, they can go and just decide which is priority and let them go for the future. I think we need to make a statement and not necessarily let this balloon go and do make it a priority list.
If that's the will of the board, I'll participate.
Just my perspective is one. I mean, if the rest of the board doesn't agree with me, then that's fine.
Well, when you submit it to the COG, they're gonna rank it 1, 2, 3, 4, right?
That's correct.
Okay, COG gonna rank it 1, 2, 3, 4 when they get to tag. And what would qualify under the check mark then?
Can you support me on that number 3, Gary?
No, Olive Orchard can stay. I'm not.
Olive Orchard should stay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think what's going to be with COG and the COG board in prioritizing these is in what stage each one of them are in. So the funding, during the timing of the funding over the next 3 or 4 years, especially the CMAQ fund, be able to utilize them. You can put number 12 at the top, but if it's not going to be ready in that time frame, then it shouldn't be a priority at the top.
I'll make it ready.
So that's the conversation I think the COG is going to have is where are these staged at? What stages are they at? And are they going to be able to utilize the money that's coming to us during the time frame?
Okay,
Sorry
I
for making that
understand
a
a little
mess.
better now that the prioritization happens there and it is based on what funds are available at which time and if we're ready for them. But I just want to make sure, again, 2002, 20 years ago.
But, an outcome of this discussion is our, I guess you can say the direction to us that we continue pursuing some of these projects, the ones that Supervisor Callaway has brought up. And, we keep working on these and get these things ready for the next cycle as they come up.
Okay, perfect. And then just a comment on number 11, the Mark Twain Unified Superintendent has reached out and it sounds like if the bond passes this November, that they will be making the necessary improvements directly around the school. So there might be potential of co-collaboration of number 11, even if it doesn't make the list, at least on the sidelines, you could potentially partner up in discussions of what the expectations of the school is for that. But it all is driven by the bond measure in November and where they stand. And that's all I have. Are there any other board comments before I turn it over to public comment? Seeing none, okay, I'm gonna start with Zoom. Are there any Zoom comments?
There are no Zoom comments.
Thank you. Are there any public comments? Seeing none. We'll bring it back to the board. This was informational. So did you get what you needed in our comment?
So at this point, the plan would be to submit applications for the call for projects. I'm coming back in a week or so with a resolution that supports the applications that we will be submitting. So that's in the works. Now, as far as the applications that we will be submitting, let's see if I understand this, okay? We would like the Valley Springs School Safety Improvement Project, as an item, the Valley Springs School Safety Improvement Project Phase 2, Highway 26, Olive Orchard Gardner Intersection Improvement, that's item number 3. That Mountain Ranch Road Bikeway Project is the connection, the Pope Street connection to the infrastructure here, that's 1. We didn't discuss this, but the Pool Station Road Bikeway and Rehabilitation Project, where we use RIM funding and maybe CMAQ funding to try to improve the shoulders for bike lanes on that one. You would also like to see a pursuit of the Railroad Flat Road Guardrail Project, the SR4 Wagon Trail Realignment Project. That would be to bike routes. Since that has not been designed, that would be something that we can discuss and incorporate into the designs once we get that going in the phase 2 of the project. I hope to be bringing a contract to you for the consultant on that in October. So for that particular one, what is it that you envision?
What do you?
On the
Yeah.
number 7 Wagon Trail Realignment Project, because at this point we have an opportunity to incorporate what we can into the design of that project.
And I think that would be the expectation. If we're in the middle of going to be doing that in construction, it would be wise to do as much as we're able to, as Gary and I are continuing to go out to fund for that section of the roadway, to consider that into it, whether it gets into CMAQ or the funds that we are advocating to get from Caltrans and the CTC. I think it would be, and it would meet the plan that Caltrans already has as a priority for the state of California.
So funding for that, if we were successful in receiving funding for that project, those funds would go to pay for the portion of the design and construction that would have to do with the bike facility on that state highway.
And I believe at the COG board that has been educated to the majority of the board that CMAQ could also be applied to Wagon Trail as well. So I believe that this, if this is removed, that the COG board will even ask where is Wagon Trail in general. So I think it'd be wise to keep this in here.
No, but for an application, I'm going to be submitting it. I'll be coming back with a resolution next week where you are supporting the application for these items. And so for item number 7, there will be an application where we will try to get CMAQ funding or whatever funding that the COG deems is what will be distributed to the project. If successful, that funding will be used to design and construct the portion of the facility that's related to the bikes.
Correct.
Okay. And as far as the others, you wish me to also submit applications for those? There is the Regional Bike Pedestrian Trails Master Plan update. That is something we could work with on the Council of Governments, and perhaps they take the lead on that.
Okay, and I believe Jack has a question.
Yeah, Robert, I didn't pay a lot of attention to this piece before, but I do have some concerns about the pool station bikeway. We got a new highway going up Highway 4. We're doing improvements over on Pool Station at 49, as Gary pointed. I don't, if you give a mouse a cookie, if we open up and improve that road, people are going to start shortcutting between and bypassing Angels and San Andreas if they're trying to do that. I think that ought to be taken into consideration. People are going to start zipping down that, and we're going to end up having to, road will become a greater safety issue. I hadn't seen that before. I just think that, the easements are pretty tight, even if we've got easements on some of that road. As we note, this is a very old road and sometimes things aren't perfect. I'd like to do some thinking about that. And I'd like to see what the thinking is of the COG in the county on that one.
We could reevaluate that one.
I don't say we throw it out. I just would like to learn more before we take away from another project and put it on that one. And that'd be, I'd talk to Gary and I'd like to talk to you more about it.
We keep it on the list of these projects that the board wishes to see moving forward, but we won't submit the application at this time for this call for projects.
Yeah, I'm just not sure. I mean, I don't know how that became the priority or a priority.
Well, you can leave it on the other argument too is development that's going to be happening at Pool Station Road and more impact too. I mean, I think it got split between, is it you and I that are now in that?
No, Ben and I've got a piece of Pool
Yeah.
Station.
Yeah, I'm going.
It's the
I've
four
got
corners,
this
so the four of us all have it. It's the four corners down there.
Yeah, I'm just not sure I haven't heard any, after you get past the, the cement plant. I haven't heard of anybody planning on doing a large development out there. I'm not so sure I'd be in support of that.
There was one a few years ago that was gonna put like 5 houses up there, but his requirement was to pave and widen Pool Station Road, and they walked away from it.
Right, you have to bring it to like Class C.
It was a level of service issue. They were below level of service C.
That's correct.
They needed to bring
Like
that
a
up
D.
to a level of service C.
And we do have to remember too, that some of these off-roads, not just Pool Station, but any other road in the county, trying to move traffic and make sure that we have movement going on at major intersections. So I think there needs to be more investigation on that one, just to make sure that it meets more of a regional moving traffic. I think but I hear what Jack says too. I was actually really shocked to see it on here.
So
But
we will not submit an application for that one for this cycle. We'll keep it on the list for work that we're going to be pursuing and studying. And for your information, I believe Pool Station Road is on the paving program. Let me ask Jen. Jen, what year is that one? In 2024,
well,
we are
then
going to
that
do some.
changes. That changes things.
It's just an overlay you're talking about up there.
An
I just don't know if we haven't had the discussion if that's where we want to grow. And we start, you improve it, then someone's going to start, more development will happen. I just think we haven't discussed that as a planning issue.
Okay, but now, with this on the list, we'll be having more discussions.
No, but now that you've mentioned that it's on the list for repaving in 2024, it would be really short-ended of the county to not put, if you're already going to be doing improvement to a road, why would you not take somebody else's money and utilize it as well? So I think maybe you can have more further discussion with this CAO's office, and then we can see where that come and bring more information back. But I see this time and time and again where we don't know that piece of the information. We tell you guys no, and then 2 years, 3 years, 4 years later, we're upset because you didn't do X, Y, and Z. So let's make sure we have all the pieces weave together. But I am with Jack. I mean, I was surprised, but I'm not gonna take things off if, you know, you're pretty far along with some of this stuff either.
And my thing is not about, I mean, we have to pave our roads and that road is horrible. I'm talking about the expansion of that. And I could just, having, you know, what we learned when we redid the roads up country, Full Station is much like that. There's a lot of complexities on our easements through some of these areas.
Craig.
Go ahead.
No, I'm just listening for consensus. Leave it on the list, try to have some discussion before next week. Or pull it off.
I'm in favor at this point until we have further discussions on what's going on, that we leave it on there. Again, it's got to go through COG and the COG board, this whole list for prioritization. So I'm in favor just for right now, just leaving it on. It will be coming back to us next week, so we can have a discussion then also. After we have a week to have a discussion, Robert and I can sit down and talk, and Craig and Amanda on it. I mean, I understand what Jack's saying, but I'm also understanding in the thought process of what Amanda's saying too. If we have a chance to do it, use somebody else's money, and 10 years from now, it works. We're all geniuses for doing it then, but I just, and that road and a lot of sections, there wouldn't even be just, the way I'm looking at it, and think of Pool Station Road between cement plant and 49, there's a lot of, that road's pretty wide in some areas there. Sure. You would just be painting the stripe, saying pipe with a template that's bike lane. So there's not a whole lot there, so I need to have that discussion.
To that point, I was just gonna say the same thing. The bike lane wouldn't necessarily go the distance. I mean, we have properties and easements there that would cost, I don't know how many millions of dollars, same type of issues we have moving forward with Highway 4 realignment. So
once you get to the bridge past the cement plant, the road goes directly down to narrow, and we're not talking about spending millions to widen that up and going all the way down.
Okay, that's good. That's where my main concern is, because you're right. There's plenty of road between the cement plant and pool. And I think Public Works did a good job where they did a dual purpose bike lane up in West Point, which, was very creative and it worked out pretty good. So those type of things are good. My main concern is traffic impacts if we improve that road to the level or straighten it out to the level that people would want to drive it to a shortcut, which they don't want to do today.
They don't, but I do when I'm in Copper.
It's just a prettier drive.
Yeah, just used to that drive now.
Yeah, I just don't want to, got a great drive in Paloma, and every morning we get to listen to the motorcycles I read about on the internet come ripping up the road, pipes open. So I'm sure the residents of Pool Station would have similar concerns.
Okay, so it'll remain on.
Yes, thank you.
All right, thank you.
So you would like us to submit the application for that? Yes.
I'm going to be I'll have a caveat. I'm a no, but I'll be able to be convinced if you can convince me.
And we have the projects, the downtown Murphy's parking electric charging project. We dependent on the COG plan. Do you want us to submit an application for that one?
I don't think we need to submit one for a plan, but for the actual EV chargers, I believe that would, yeah.
Okay.
And we're required to have a certain amount of those, right? So we have to do them somewhere. And
No,
Murphy seems to be where all the Teslas park.
Okay.
So
We are submitting it.
Only in the duck races.
For the EV charging stations to implement the COG plan. And then number 10, you wish us to submit an application for that one?
I think I'd rather we wait until after we deal with the next agenda item.
And then there's 11, which dependent on the bond, we may or may not need to do that. The Murphy's Park pedestrian bridge project. You wish us to submit an application for that?
Yes,
Okay.
absolutely. That bridge has to be retrofitted. Can I just?
Yeah.
Mr. Packinger, on the one for the Murphy sidewalk and outdoor dining, I want us maybe separate out the outdoor dining since we'll be dealing with that the next agenda item, but sidewalks, maybe not this go around, but at least the next go around, where there are none.
Yes, Supervisor
Thank you.
Calhoun. So I will go through my list again, make sure, because next week we don't have time to get this resolution in here. We will submit it for items 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 9, and 12.
Sorry, why did you take that?
Take out 8 because I believe we're gonna work on that one with the Council of Governments.
No, I was saying take out development of an updated plan to identify facility. You don't need that part, but the others are to put in and to pay for an EV.
Right, that's number 9. We're gonna put that in.
Okay,
But number 8 is the Regional Bike Pedestrian Trails Master Plan update. We could talk to the Council of Governments. They could pay for that. And.
we don't want to take that out.
No, that was the first thing Mr. Garamendi talked about.
Okay,
None of us said take that out.
put that one in and we'll. get-
Please keep number 8 in.
And make sure that it includes the OHV and the trails and.
Economic development tool.
And then you skipped over 11.
11, because you said that there is a bond measure that may be coming into.
But I never said to remove it. I just was giving you information that there could be a potential in the future if this made to the call for project, a collaboration with the school district. Yeah, keep it on,
Keep it
please.
in there, okay. Number 11, we'll keep in there.
Yeah, I was just giving you information that was given to me this morning.
Okay.
I would like to follow the steps of Supervisor Stopper and getting a master plan like he has worked on for so long at Valley Springs. So I think Copper could and Gay, but I remember Ben coming to the COG as a public member advocating to Gary and I to get
I
Valley
supported
Springs.
Mr. Toffanelli in his expedition to get that done. It was,
Okay.
thank you for the work.
Okay.
I did too. Just jumping in on.
But yes, I think it would be, we have a template, we've seen, how successful Valley Springs has been, and I would like to keep the copper on there, please.
Yes. Okay, we'll be seeing you in a few days with the resolution in support of these applications.
Thank you. And I believe I've covered my bases with public comment. Yep, okay. Okay. You guys good?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for your work.
Thank you.
Okay. Now on to regular agenda item number 7. Clerk, can you please read out?
Item number 7 is an action item from Public Works. Number 1, find project exempt from CEQA. Number 2, introduce the outdoor dining encroachment permit ordinance as chapter 12.09 of the county code. Number 3, waive the first reading of the ordinance. And number 4, authorize the Department of Public Works to publish a summary of the ordinance for public review.
So I've got 1, 2, 3, 4 names. Who's leading the conversation? I believe it's in Public Works, but I see Doug and Gabriel and Julie on here as well.
I could simply start by saying this was a collaborative effort. It took many of us a lot of time to put this together. As far as Public Works viewpoint, we are really interested in just preserving traffic safety and making sure that we can maintain our roads. So whatever the people who wish to use these platforms or build them, there are some standards that need to be met. We believe that they're not difficult to meet, but we're willing to work with the owners of the establishments to make sure that it's something easy. We have to develop an application process, yes. And again, hopefully that's a simple thing that we can do. We don't think of it shouldn't be too elaborate. Thank you.
Does any other staffer have a presentation they would like to, or information they'd like to give to the board? Okay, I'm not seeing any on Zoom. Okay, with that, I'm gonna move it over to Supervisor Callaway.
Yes, I have quite a few comments, Mr. Packinger. I'm sorry your colleagues are leaving you hanging out to dry, but hold on, this is gonna be quite a few things I have to say. Hello, Ms. Moss Lewis. Yes, okay. Without getting too much into the weeds, I am gonna hit on some key points. One on the parking and the fees. I have a real concern about on 030, number 9, the road impact mitigation fee. I definitely do not support that. The road impact mitigation fee is established for new development and where we needed added capacity. This is not part of that. It doesn't apply in any way. All we're doing is taking people that are already existing in the, I need to preface my remarks. I understand this ordinance is countywide. I am coming very much from a Murphy's perspective because that's who I see as being mostly impacted. This has to do with parklets or parking or platforms, whatever we wish to call it, in the public right of way, not that's on private property in like something like where Marval might be or what have you. So if we went with the road impact mitigation fee, and I'm just going back to 2004 because I'm not sure what it is now, the road impact mitigation fee was $3,300 per 1,000 square foot. So if I have a 500 square foot platform, I'd be having to pay $1,650 into the RIM fee. That's just the start of what we're asking these businesses to pay. And the in lieu parking fee is just over $4,000 per parking space. And the businesses involved in the Murphy's area maybe take up 2. So now we're talking $8,000 just for the in lieu. Now, I think there can be some compromise in paying something into the Murphy's in lieu parking, paying over $4,000 is to me not acceptable. So we can discuss that. The 4-foot setbacks on either side would be for, I'll just take one of them. They have 1 parking space. If they have to come 4 feet back in for relation to parking and for cars, that would be enough for them to have a walkway and 4 people on the platform. So to me, that is not acceptable either. We're now reducing the amount of space that's available for the platforms. I understand the drainage and access to them, Mr. Packinger, and that they are responsible for any drainage that goes underneath the platform. But to say there has to be a quick removal of the platform so we could get in, or they could get in and clean out a grate. I mean, here you have a platform, which most of them will have probably spent somewhere between 5,000 and 10,000 to put on. And now we wanted a quick removal. There has to be some way that we could help them in building a trapdoor system, elevated under 2x4s, or I'm not a contractor, but when we talk about that, the drainage issue is a concern. The businesses understand that, but to say if there's something happened, they have to remove the platform, maybe there's some construction designs. Plus, we're also saying they have to have the platforms designed by a licensed designer or engineer. I'm not sure. So now we're probably talking another 2,000 or 3,000 for them to have it designed to public works and buildings conditions. And I'm not even touching on lots of things. 040, number K, permittees may utilize fireproof tents or shelters. Yep, that was something we agreed to in 2020. They agreed to that. But I'm saying, what if a permittee wanted to have like just a metal roof or a roof of some kind over the platform? So when winter comes or rain like we've had, it can still be utilized, because with the tents or canopies they now have, they fill with water. And I'm just thinking, is there another option? Again, allowing that it's open space. It's just that the cover would be something other than a tent. On number N, the permittee shall not allow any live music. There are businesses in Murphy's that are that play music that are outside. So why cannot these permittees allow music? I wasn't sure. I know we want to be cognizant of the neighbors, but we have a noise ordinance regarding music. I know one of these permittees, their ABC license said they cannot play music beyond 10 o'clock at night. And that was in agreement with a hotel that's nearby. And they agreed to that. So I don't understand why we couldn't allow music. Maybe we put something on that. And I'm just hitting the top of my concerns. Solar powered lights versus electric lights. I'm not clear what the cost element would be on doing that, and what would be wrong with having electric if it could be done in a safe manner from their inside business to their outside business. And then off-street parking in Murphy's, that would have to go back to the in lieu. Instead of one parking for 4 people, why not? Because that really boosts up the cost. Why not say how you were taking up 2 spaces, so we have to come up with X amount that you would have to pay into the Murphy's in lieu parking fee for taking up those 2 spaces. And one of the businesses only takes up 1 space. And since the duration of the permit is only for 5 years, it seems like the businesses are expending an awful lot of costs upfront just on county's fees to have something that is of benefit to the businesses and to the community and to the county as a whole. So I guess when I look at key things, music, I know on the room fee, a modification to the parking in lieu fee, the 4-foot setback, I think will cause some hardships because now you're reducing substantially the size of the platforms, though I understand the safety concerns. The railings, the setback from the fog line, there's no problem with that. That's all for now.
That's all for now.
Yes.
And if I may, Supervisor Callaway, I'm happy to touch upon a couple of your points, and then I'll very much defer to Mr. Oliver and Mr. Packinger on some others. With respect to the rim fees and the in lieu parking fees, the ordinance as drafted and presented today tracks existing county code. You're correct that these are not brand new uses, but these are expansion of existing uses requiring an additional approval from the county. And so under county code and the rim fee ordinance, these are things that would be subject to the rim fee. That said, the board could certainly make a policy decision to waive some or all of that. Same with the in lieu parking fees. We've drafted this with the intention of tracking the existing requirements as they relate to Murphy's in lieu parking where applicable. Obviously, as you mentioned, this ordinance is beyond just Murphy's, but that's something that the board could, as a policy decision, choose to alter in this ordinance. And then just briefly with respect to, your questions about music and lighting, the intention here, I know it may not look like it to you, but the intention was to make this a more streamlined, less expensive, less time-consuming process, make it less bureaucratic. We do believe that we can do this, find it exempt from CEQA the way that we've drafted it. And in looking at some of those things like increased noise, increased lighting, that was with an eye to making this exempt from CEQA. And then I'll defer to Mr. Oliver on building code questions. My understanding is that commercial structures under state building code need to be engineered, but I am not the expert on that, so I will look to Mr. Oliver.
Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the board, Doug Oliver, Chief Building Official. Can you all hear me?
Yes.
Okay, very good. This head mic sometimes likes to fool with me, so I want to make sure. To answer Supervisor Callaway's questions, I wrote down a list, and I'll go through in the order I heard them. I think I want to first address kind of an overarching idea here. The ordinance itself is allowing an encroachment into the public right of way. So there isn't a lot of discussion on the structural requirements because the structural requirements are governed by the California Building Standards Code. So when you're going to Public Works to obtain a permit, there's only a couple of limitations that are in the ordinance, as Sarah had mentioned, because the majority of it is controlled through another means. To address the actual building design, there's several things that you had touched on that aren't controlled by the ordinance. So for instance, if they wanted to put a roof over that structure, it's not addressed in here because the building code could allow it. The design methodology, the materials, it gives a wide range to what you can do in the location that you're being authorized to construct in the public right of way. So that would mean that, for instance, the drainage concerns, they do have to maintain drainage, but it opens the door on several different methods of how to obtain that drainage. The design of the structure could be modular, where they could pick up portions with a forklift and slide it back so they can clean debris out of drainage, or they could provide the access hatches. They could provide temporary plastic culverts that are underneath to direct the flow. There's a lot of different ways to do that. And so by not putting it in the ordinance, we are opening it up to several different options and opening it up to discussion with the owners as to how they're going to accomplish these items. When we talk about the music venue, to add on to that portion of the conversation, right now we're looking at this as an outdoor assembly use through the eyes of the building code. So there is an occupant loading that is applied to that. And when you have a music event, you are changing the occupant loading and increasing the amount of people in the area. And all of your exiting, your ADA, your safety and egress, those are governed by the amount of people that could be accessing that at any given time. Also, it could, if we're allowing musical venues, that platform that is initially intended to be used for dining could potentially be turned into a legitimate stage, which has a series of other code requirements, fire blocking, draft stopping just underneath the design. I guess so the short answer is it gets complex the more you add uses to that platform. And so the ordinance is just designed to simplify it and make it to where they can put it down and get rolling. Now, the solar versus permanent electrical concern. The solar under 50 volts is exempt from a building permit, so they can provide whatever decorative lighting or any mood lighting or specific task lighting using that solar option. And it represents almost zero public risk. And so that was put in the ordinance, not to say it can't change, but when you allow permanent electrical wiring, you have to follow the requirements in the National Electrical Code. So there's a lot of right ways to do it, but there's also a lot of wrong ways to do it. I've been in a couple of jurisdictions just on vacation where they've had the outdoor dining, and some of the electrical, frankly, is a little scary. What you would think is a safe application, for instance, let's put the conductors in plastic conduit. Well, now span that plastic conduit 6 to 8 feet and let the summer heat melt it and start sagging it down, into the path of travel. You can't necessarily put conductors safely on a sidewalk where people are going to be crossing, often with wheeled vehicles. The ADA requirements also, you end up tripping over that because you have anywhere from an 1.5 to 3 half-inch or 3/4 inch conduit, and wheelchairs can't go over anything over a half-inch bevel. So not to say that you can't do it, but it increases cost because the materials you have to select are specific in order to make sure that you're not creating a hazard by providing that electrical. Now, your board could decide to go ahead and do that. Then we would be entering into that conversation with the business owners about what materials would be suitable and working with their designers on how to get that electrical to the platform. And then in addition, pre-plan for if and when they remove that, how do you safely terminate the electrical without leaving anything behind that could be a problem. So there's some concerns there. Not, as I said, though, not to say that we couldn't do it. It just does add to the conversation with the owner. One of the biggest concerns that might be a surprise was the requirement to have a licensed design professional involved. That isn't that isn't the uniform DUG code. It's not a local ordinance. It's actually contained in business and professions code at the state level. And it governs who can design what and where. And so there are exemptions. The overarching rule there is that in order to design anything in California, you have to be a licensed design professional. Then there's a list of exemptions. The exemptions start with single-family dwellings, accessory uses that said single-family dwellings, that sort of thing. But once you move into commercial territory, as soon as you have the public interacting, the exemptions are limited to trade work and things that do not impact the fire life safety, your exiting, your ADA, the things that are going to hurt the public. As soon as you have that, then a licensed design professional is required. And ultimately, they're proving out a higher floor loading. Floor loading. They're proving out proper exiting. They're proving out where you can lead the ramps to without interrupting the flow of foot traffic across the storefronts. It's not as intensive as an addition or tenant improvement to a commercial facility, but there are some mechanics that are involved here that we need to prove out to ensure that the platform is safe. That once again, that all goes into the discussion directly with the business owner, because everyone wants to do it a little different. So what it requires is for us to meet them on site or have them come in, sit down over a preliminary plan, work out what they need to do. If they already have something built, is this, where do we go from here to get it into compliance? We're open, and we've always been open to sitting down with the business owners and working through whatever challenges that we have that the state has on the books for us. I think I hit everything. Is there something that I missed on the building code angle?
You hit it all, Doug, and some.
He did.
Gary.
Yeah, I just have a question on this ordinance. I'm not opposed to it. I'm all for it, but haven't heard anything about these structures, and you're right, they need to be movable easily with a forklift or whatever needs to be done, because we haven't discussed anything about if you're out in a parking space, if utilities districts need to do work and tear up the road, replace a water line or a sewer line or anything like that, that these things need to be able to get out of the way. It's in the ordinance, I know, but it's part of what needs to be why they're not permanent structures. I do have a question on how many are there out there now?
Currently, I'm aware of, I believe 3 currently, 3 or 4.
There's one who I'm not sure is going to renew when the executive order is lifted, and there's 2 with 3.
And how close are they to each other?
They're close.
They're close.
One is a winery and 2 are restaurants.
Okay. That's all I have for right now. Oh, I do have one other question. I'm sorry. It says in here, the program would authorize a 5-year renewable encroachment. And they were talking about rim fees and in lieu parking fees. After 5 years, they come back in for a renewable encroachment permit. Do they have to repay those fees again?
No.
No, Supervisor Toffenelli, it's drafted, and that's in section 12.09060 A. The last sentence says that rim and in lieu parking fees do not need to be paid again when it's renewed. And I apologize, I neglected to mention one thing at the outset, and this speaks, Supervisor Callaway, to why it was
poor Mr. Packinger up here presenting. This is, you'll notice that this is drafted to be located in chapter 12 of county code. This because we are letting these business owners use the county the public right of way. We put it where encroachment permits go, and that's in Public Works' world. You'll recall that we did also get board direction to do this so that business owners who would not be needing to utilize the county right of way, but rather would be doing so on private property. And we'll be bringing that back as a separate ordinance because that doesn't fit into the same section of code. So I just wanted to throw that out there in case anyone was wondering.
Thank you. So we're charging these guys $1,600 in RIM, $4,000 for a parking space, 5-year renewable, but this is an ordinance for 18 months.
No, so Supervisor Garamendi, so yes, the in lieu parking fees would only apply where that's the case. With respect to the duration, the 18 months is the amount of time that folks have to initially participate.
So after 18 months, if you're not in the program, you're not getting in the program?
That's how it's drafted, yes.
And what happens if you get in this program and you pay $4,000 for parking space and you decide that was a bad business call and you pull up your platform and go home? Do you get your money back? Prorated over that 5-year, whatever period?
That's something that if the board wanted to make that policy call, we could certainly draft that in.
It just seems like, it's hard running a small business. And I just feel like, this is a lot of money to ask someone to do. And I'm not sure whether they'll make it back. And then if they change their mind, they own a county parking space, they're not going to get to keep it. So it's tough to make that investment.
Yeah, I don't see any reason why we couldn't draft in a proration if that's what the majority of the board wants.
I know that we've got parking problems. I don't feel like I'm hesitant to tax our small business. And Murphy's is important for our overall economy of this county. We should be, we take care of parking. I want these businesses to succeed because we all win. None of them are in my district. Maybe Mocha Java wants to have a table outside, but for the most part, a lot of our people I represent work in Murphy's too.
Certainly, and I think that's why the board's direction was to not charge folks to use our right of way, which is what a lot of other jurisdictions are doing. They're actually leasing by the square foot, the county right of way. So the board has already made it clear that that's not something you're interested in doing. We obviously did not drop that in here, but if you wanted to make it, if the board wanted to make additional tweaks to county code, we can certainly revise this accordingly.
Just, $5,600 to go, let alone having to have a platform engineered. And don't we want people enjoying Murphy's and listening to music?
Supervisor Stopper, and then I'll go back to Callaway.
No, that's
Okay.
I'm maybe council can help me. We've been through this premises and it's not defined in here that I didn't see where it's defined in here that it's strictly to the area that they're trying to permit, because generally the premises is defined as the whole area the business operates on. So at this point, when you start putting in the certain things like no music on the premises, you're effectively saying they can't do it inside also. So I may have missed it.
No, that's a very good point, Supervisor Stopper. In the let's see, it's 12.09020 J defines the term permitted premises for purposes of this chapter, and it states that it refers to the portion of the public right of way that's being utilized and for which they're obtaining an encroachment permit.
Thank you, I missed
But that's a good point.
Other than that, I believe my question goes back to all these permitted areas are strictly in Murphy's. Okay.
I believe the ones that currently
operate
under the emergency resolution that the board put into place during the COVID state of emergency. Yes.
Okay.
But this would open it up certainly to where.
Yeah, well, yeah, absolutely. It was opened up before.
It's a countywide, correct. They've both been a countywide program.
But this is being put forward to directly deal with the businesses that would like to continue doing the use of Murphy's. No, I just,
Four.
right, which is
But
3 or
it
4.
says there could be as many as 24, 25.
Right. Okay. No, and I understand why a lot of this here, code, safety, I appreciate your answer on it when we're trying to keep it within, the confines of ministerial when it comes to CEQA and moving forwards. So I can understand why we didn't want to add more uses that could bring us outside that. Thank you.
Maluda? No? Okay. I'll open it up to okay, at this time, Robert, do you have something to add?
Just a couple things. As far as having access to drainage, the platform doesn't have to be totally removed. As long as we have access to get to the drainage. As far as utilities, perhaps having to get in there and do something, you never know. They have to get in there. I'm sure that working with the owners of the platform, there's something that we can do so that the whole platform's not affected. It may be the way they construct the platform, they could leave something like Mr. Oliver mentioned, it could be done in maybe modular fashion so that you're not destroying the whole platform to be able to access the area that you need. The 4-foot separation between the platform and the parking, there needs to be something, maybe it's not 4 feet, but there needs to be something to be able to allow a person to back into that parking stall that's right next to that platform. It will be very challenging for someone to use the parking area next to the platform without some sort of separation.
Mr. Packinger, I have been parking next to those platforms for 2 years. And and I would, yes, it would be nice if there would be some allowance on public works part. For example, the business that has only 1 parking spot, if we did 4 feet on either side, that person would have just a walkway to a narrow platform. So to me then why don't we just say we can't have them? So, I mean, if there's some way that public works could be in the design element, it could be, I don't know, there's wine barrels or whatever, could be designed so that cars can do. Cars hit more of the poles around the trees than they've hit the platforms. I mean, we have 2 years of experience with these platforms. And except for a couple of incidents, we have not had a problem with the platforms. So I think there needs to be some partnership. I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, Supervisor Callaway, there's no law that says that you need a specific amount of distance for parallel parking. I think this is just Mr. Packinger's educated guess, and it's really up to the board to decide how easy or hard parking is going to be there. This was, I think we got a lot of our distances based on the ordinances that other counties have in place. And this was Mr. Packinger's best guess as somebody who's experienced in parking and the right of way, but it's up to the board what the trade-off is going to be.
After 2 years, we have not had a problem. It's not that I can understand what Julie's saying in public works and we need something, but maybe something can be done in the design of the platform, the outer edges, because we are requiring a fencing at 42 inches, whatever code says, things that could be done. Plus we have, the ADA ramps, which can't go into the sidewalk. So then you're gonna have to reduce maybe the platform to get the ADA in. I'm not saying it can be done and it needs to be done. But now all of a sudden, we're making these so small, it isn't economical for the businesses involved to do it. So.
We can work on that. with
Um,
the Separation.
Thank you.
You know, that I heard what Ms. Moss Lewis just said, and we as a board in making a policy call can change the number from 4 feet to a smaller number that may be usable for the tighter situations up in Murphy's. You know, we just have to come to a consensus as the board what we
Well, I
would
mean,
like
I
that
don't
number to be.
feel that I'm not a contractor in that, oh, well, we're gonna make it 2 feet. Okay, now that's 4 feet. So now the person who has the one parking spot can now have maybe 4 people on the platform versus nobody on a platform. I mean, I think there's other options. Can we do something, I guess is what I'm asking, without being specific as to what a side setback would be from a parking spot? Could it be, it has to be designed to be safe? I mean, on one of the businesses, the parking is not parallel. It's perpendicular because there's a fire hydrant there. And so it's already blocked off that people can't park there anyway. I don't know,
Yes.
6 inches.
Let's get to public comment.
I'll take 6 inches.
Okay. Okay, at this time, I'm gonna open it up to public comment. I'm gonna start with Zoom. Are there anyone on Zoom?
There is no public comment on Zoom.
Okay, we'll turn it to the room. So at this time, public comment for the room, please be mindful of the light. It's 3-minute comment period. So anyone up? This is your time to tell us what you think.
Hi, my name's Anthony Delaney. I own my wife and I own the Murphy's Irish Pub, and we have one of the platforms that are outside. I appreciate all the discussion of this because these are really big issues. I want to echo some of the things that were said. I do feel that the money piece is high, as you mentioned, that's one of the biggest pieces that I've been seeing in looking at if we're going to be able to take advantage of this opportunity. The platform itself is going to be expensive. So adding on $4,000 or $8,000 plus another $1,300 or $1,500 for these fees, which I get, but I don't know where we're going to come up with that money. And I also think that as Marita also mentioned, if we're reducing the size of the platform, but we're also charging a decent amount to have the platform, and also the proposal has a number of different options that say essentially that the county can take it back at any time without any compensation, that the owners of the platform are the ones who then will have to just eat all of that money. All of these things make me a little nervous. So I'm just throwing that out. I also wanted to say something about the music fees or the music. I understand the concept of the possibility that bringing music onto the platform could theoretically bring more people onto the platform. But if we already have, a capacity limit for the platform, then whether there's music or not, it can't go over that capacity limit. So I don't think having music is going to be a conflict with too many people on the platform, personally. I'm also curious about the 18 months to participate. Since we are talking oftentimes about a large amount of money, part of me wonders if we have the opportunity to take a break and look at it. We've got to bring our platform down for the lighting project anyway. So when can we put the platform back up? Maybe if we take a little time away to see if it's going to financially be the best option for us. What if that takes over 18 months? I don't know. I'm not sure what the 18 months is for. And really quick, if we have any type of a roof, we've been told that the roof needs to be anchored to the ground, but you guys are saying that we can't have anything anchored to the ground, but it has to be anchored to the ground for safety.
Thank you.
That was impressive.
Good job.
Who's next?
Hello, my name is Robert Class. I own grounds and firewood in Murphy's. One of them, firewood, I took down the outdoor space. Grounds, I've left it up. I'm definitely a proponent for the platforms. In a lot of instances, it's a terrific asset to the town of Murphy's. One thing to be considered is this is not a business increase for restaurants or, the pub's an excellent restaurant, or Alchemy. Seating isn't what makes restaurants. The size of the kitchen does. So we can't just keep shoving more and more tables in and think that business profits will go up. Once a kitchen is set, that's all we can do for the number of seats that we can handle without enormously long waits where people then yelp about. So the platforms allow people who are nervous about sitting inside to sit outside. One of the great advantages. It also beautifies our town incredibly, making it a much quieter, slower town where cars actually, I believe, go a lot slower because of the visual aids they see as they drive down the road. For the businesses that decide, like I did one with grounds and took away from firewood, they are a structure outside that gets remarkably abused. They are not something we're going to put up once and then be done with. The weather is brutal on them. It's brutal on the chairs. It's brutal on the tables. What people are, how they are sitting outside is not how they are sitting inside, the spills, everything. So the cost of maintaining is also a huge part of us having to have platforms outside. So then to go back to what my colleagues were saying is anything you can do to make the initial investment as palatable as possible makes us more inclined to be able to keep the platforms in our town. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Are there any other public comments?
Yes, I'm just part of the public, but I'd like to reiterate kind of what River had to say is that none of these platforms really increased any business. Myself, I have a health issue. I wasn't able to go. I was continuously support both these people's places. And I wasn't able to go for a while. My wife's super health conscious. And these platforms enabled me to go out to dinner again. That's about it. So it didn't really add anybody. And we see our friends that we did see for a while. It's just a regular business as far as I see. Thank you.
Thank you.
So I'm a consumer and I really have appreciated the platforms. 2 reasons, health reasons, obviously, and COVID's not going to go away anytime soon, nor is the flu. So having the option to eat outside in the fresh air in Murphy's and enjoy the ambience is wonderful. There's been several times when we have been downtown and our friends happen to be out on the platforms, which then we merge over with them and sit down, and before you know it, we're eating and we're drinking with them. So it's conducive to business, and I truly appreciate what they have done for us. I know it's a huge cost we're more likely to go down there, especially now since COVID has sort of lifted a little bit, but it wouldn't make any difference. I still prefer to be outdoors. So the platforms, I think, are a really good thing. There's been a number of conversations that we struck up with other consumers that are not from the area, that are sitting outside, and it's a great topic of conversation to talk about Murphy's. Both of us have been involved with the museum, so we have a little bit of history. We can talk to, like I say, visitors about what Murphy's is all about, and how there was more history a few years ago. Now there's more wineries than history. But so it's like I say, conducive to these kinds of conversations, which in turn bring business. So thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Jessica Delaney, and I'm also owner of the Murphy's Irish Pub. I just want to thank you guys for all the work that you guys have been doing. I know that the county has to do something. You have to have a policy, you have to have a permit, you have to do all of that. The simple, like River said, the simpler it is for us and the less, more cost effective it is, the more likely we're able to do it. I would hate for us to spend all this time developing this permit process and then everybody decides that they can't afford to do it. So I do have one question. I read in there somewhere about another calculation that was sort of like so many square feet divided by 13 and divided by 4. And I just wanted to get some clarification on that because I'm trying to figure out how many parking spaces we would actually have to pay for. Our spot takes up 2 right now, but based on that calculation from what I saw, I think it would be like 3.3 spaces that we would have to pay for. And then it would just be like, no, there's no way. We can't pay, $20,000 for that. And then another 20 for a platform that can be removed at any time it needs to be removed. I think that's more complicated than it is sounding today. So I want to be able to do it, but there's definitely some limitations for us financially. So thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other public comment in the room? No. I'm going to go back to the clerk. Are there any comment on Zoom?
No, there are not.
Okay. With that, I'll bring it back to the board. Marita?
I guess the question I have for staff is, do we have the authority through this to establish, reduce the in lieu fee? I'm not saying get rid of it. I'm just saying to modify it because we have a code on what the in lieu fee is.
Yes, as a policy decision, it would require board action, obviously, but yes, I don't see any reason why the board could not direct staff to change. So again, this, as currently presented today, this tracks existing county code, existing county requirements, but there's no reason why the board can't adjust that, either reduce or.
For this.
Or
Right.
waive, or decide to
Right.
waive.
Waive it, yeah.
So what
We
the-
could decide to waive it completely.
Yes.
Right, so what we would do, if that's the board's direction, is we would just draft something into this to state that permittees who are taking advantage of this, pulling encroachment permits pursuant to this ordinance would not have to, we wouldn't say not have to pay into the in lieu, because to the extent they're already subject to it, that would remain. It's just that it wouldn't increase this additional usage, this additional capacity, whatever you want to call it, would not increase the amount of in lieu parking fees and or rim fees that they are subject to.
Can we add Basin? Can we add Basin to that?
I'm sorry, say again?
Basin.
Oh, yes, right. Any applicable benefit basin fees, yes.
Which doesn't apply in Murphy's, but it could.
In other places, it might, yes.
So what I am proposing is that we eliminate the rim fee. And for the in lieu parking fee, I feel like there needs to be some contribution to the in lieu parking fee. But not 4,000 per space. I would think, with we could do 1,000 per parking space. Then there is a contribution to the in lieu parking fee, which is the one that hopefully we will use to find 8 more if I can find 8 more parking spots, then could we eliminate the in lieu parking fee? No. Okay. I mean, I just think there needs to be a contribution because we are taking up parking. It's a sensitive issue in the community, and there would be some allocation to the in lieu parking fee.
If I can ask a clarifying question, Ms. Calloway, would your proposal be that so you just mentioned 1,000 per parking space, would that be for each parking space used? Or for each, so as you know, the current fee is that capacity drives paying into the in lieu fund. So you could have it be either or both.
No, that it's just a well, it's not a contribution they're gonna pay into the in lieu fee. I think that makes it more palatable for the rest of the community since parking is an issue. So it would be.
For each space taken away.
Taken away.
Okay, but not also an additional contribution for increased capacity. Okay.
No, because I don't see an increased capacity.
Okay.
So before we get too far down with staff, why don't we bring it back to the rest of the board and see if that is what the other thought process is for individuals. So I'm gonna start with Gary and then go to Ben.
Here's my opinion on it. Would like to see both the in lieu parking and the rim fees waived completely. And my idea behind that is because these are temporary buildings. These are not permanent. They're temporary and they can be removed by the county at any time. It's in the ordinance and it was brought up by the public comments out there, and it was on my thoughts. I wrote it down immediately and I had it written down here as I went through this thing, that they are temporary. They're not there permanent. So they're not putting foundations in, they're not putting in the building permanently. So just, that's my opinion, that because they are temporary, that I think both fees should be waived. And that's my opinion.
I'm in agreement with Mr. Toffenelli, waived to at that point, yeah, that's it. That's it. I don't even need to explain it.
I would like to just reiterate adding the basin as a waive as well. Just making sure we get all 3 boxes. Supervisor Garamendi.
I agree. It's hard to run a small business and it's temporary. As you said, you might decide business-wise, it was a bad call. You'd hate to be stuck with a $16,000 bill on top of that. So I agree with Gary and the rest of my colleagues. It does beg the question of parking. That maybe we ought to talk about that at some point as a county, because there are other places that are short on parking that if we figured this out, we could drive more business to our downtowns. We do a little bit in Murphy's, but there's just a lot of spots. Mokel is a good example of a place that could use some parking. But maybe, we collect TOT and sales tax off these guys. Maybe that could be our role in their success.
Of course, you could come eat your meals in Murphy's and drink wine at the wine.
I do, and I always enjoy it, Marita.
I did this weekend.
By me.
His car is still parked there.
Sorry, I just have another clarifying question then. We can make those changes to remove all in lieu parking fee fund contributions and eliminate all benefit basin fees, eliminate all rim fees. I'm probably going to recommend that we do have the board make a public benefit finding when that comes back for adoption. But we can draft that in when the ordinance comes back. But my other question, as currently drafted, If the business is not in downtown Murphy's, where they would normally be subject to the in lieu fee, and they are taking up parking spots normally in the public right of way, we require, it's drafted to state that they have to provide additional parking somewhere else. Would you like that to be left in or taken out?
I can't address it for the rest of the county. But for Murphy's, that's why we have an in lieu parking.
Right, this is
There
for,
is no parking.
correct.
I would like it taken out.
You like taking out? So would I.
Yeah, we don't need more bureaucracy on this. Take it out.
Okay, so just to be clear, we're going to, regardless of how many parking spaces the permittees may be using, we're just gonna do it and we'll lose a little bit of parking if that's the case. Okay.
Yeah. I would also like, if I understood Mr. Oliver, that if they want a roof, that he said that was allowed under the building code. Oh, hi Doug.
Temporary.
Oh,
Hi there.
sorry.
I'm back. So to answer that,
What was that? I wasn't clear what you were saying.
so if there's going to be a roof, essentially the designer just has to identify that the addition of the roof is not going to impact the building as far as sliding or uplift. So if the materials are heavy enough and they can, and the load works out, then it's entirely reasonable that it could be allowed to have a roof system on there. Alternately, there could also be shade cloth or other components, as long as the shade cloth is fire retardant and is a suitable distance away from, say, your outdoor heaters, which are kind of popular right now and represent a potential threat if they're too close to those materials. But yeah, it's just part of the design process. If they want a roof, they prove that it's not going to overturn or get blown into the street.
Okay, thank you. Jessica, did that answer your question on that? Or Anthony, I'm not sure which of you. Thank you. I would also like to allow that there be music, and the reason I say that is one, Mr. Delaney said that there is a capacity on what would be allowed on the platform, so that would include musicians as well as patrons. And we do have other businesses in the downtown area that play music outside, even though it's on their property, not the public right of way. So I'd like us to allow that or just eliminate that. And then on the 4-foot setback, I'm not sure how to quite answer that. I mean, Mr. Stopper said 6 inches. I don't know if that's realistic. I understand the concern. It could be done through design or agreement with Public Works. Council, how would we manage that one?
I mean, the idea, I think, was to make these as streamlined and ministerial as possible, right? It's either a yes or no from Public Works. You either check the boxes or you don't. So, I mean, I think for ease of implementation, my thought is that it would make more sense to have a set, which again, does not have to be 4 feet, but whatever the board directs. But if Robert has a different thought process, I'll defer to him.
I do agree with Supervisor Callaway that having those limitations really squeezes what's out there with a platform. So if our concern is having the way for people to get in and out on that next neighboring parking stall. So I think there might be something, we might have to just take a look and see what can be done as far as, I'm sure I could look at some astral document or something that may have some parking radius stuff in there and see what's the separation between an obstacle that might work. We'll have to look into it. I don't have an answer for you.
Right now, Ms. Callaway, the ones in Murphy's are right butt up to the side of the parking spots. I get the intention of leaving space, like if you pulled in too close to it, and someone backed up to you, you couldn't get out. You gotta be smarter than parking space. Leave stuff room in your rear. 6 inches is fine. I mean, if you don't want to get stuck there, park someplace else. I just see that 4 foot or even a foot on each side is really, especially if you're down to a 2 stall or 1 stall area, is just down to a walkway, as the example Ms. Callaway brought up. So I think opening it up to a very small margin gives us the opportunity to help them be able to facilitate that.
We can make
So-
it motorcycle only on each end.
Movable object, you can't get out, so you move it.
Depends upon personal responsibility.
Yeah, but yeah, be smarter than the parking spot. Okay. I won't pull my big truck up there, but I might take my little Jeep and park it there. But that said, I think at this point, just letting them optimize on that area is the best way we can help them facilitate it being a benefit to their business.
So we could take, let me just make sure I've got my citation right, 12.09040E. If that's the board direction, we can remove that entirely. We can change it to state that permittee shall not encroach upon adjacent vehicle parking spaces.
Sorry, they can't anyway because they can only go within the borders of the existing.
Right, so then would the board prefer that we remove E entirely?
I would be in favor of that as one. Sounds like Ms. Callaway's in favor of it.
We solve the music question.
We do. We could, if a majority of the board so directs, we could remove N of that section as well. Or alter it, of course.
Alter it.
I think I'll go with what Mr. Delaney said, and that music will be can be performed on the permitted premise given the capacity of the platform.
But would that be during open hours, just like the other uses of?
Yes.
Okay.
May I make a recommendation? We provide some form of language to identify that if they're going to use it as a portion of a musical venue, that they at least declare it so that we can make sure that it's properly reviewed as far as the structure is concerned.
For both uses, yes, absolutely.
Yes, thank you.
Oh, does that include the Cameo Plaza?
That was already completed, ma'am, and a permit has been issued and finalized.
Oh, outstanding.
Rita, you're winning quite extensively here today.
There are other complications when it comes to the music, when it comes to if they're moving anything past acoustical instruments as with power. But, as long as they can stay within those confines. That's palatable to me.
I want to thank my colleagues for their support on this. I think it's good, it's good for the businesses, it's good for the community, and it's good for Calaveras. And if we're a business-friendly county. This is an example.
Jack.
Rita got it. Thank you all for doing business in Calaveras. Appreciate you being here.
I think, can I, if you'll allow me, board, I do want to just briefly run through, make sure that we're all on the same page and that we have majority support for all of the changes and that I'm not missing anything. We want to state that permittees will not be subject to additional RIM fees as a result of obtaining this permit and this use, not be subject to any in lieu parking fees where applicable, not be subject to any additional benefit basin fees where applicable, that there's no requirement to provide additional parking spots to compensate for those that will be utilized, that we're removing 12.09040E, which specifies parking setbacks in its entirety. We're just deleting that subsection. And then subsection N of that same section, which was pertains to live music, rather than stating that no live music shall be performed on the platforms or the permitted premises. It's acceptable for live music to be performed during business hours within the capacity in terms of how many people are allowed to be on the structure. And that must be declared or stated to the county that that's the intention.
I can agree with all those.
Yeah. Did I miss anything?
If so, I'll let you know.
I'm sure you will.
We're good?
Thank you.
Okay, we will make those edits and bring it back with public benefit findings surrounding the waiver of the fees as soon as state law allows.
All right, I appreciate it. Thank you.
And I want to thank you guys too, also for doing business in Calaveras County. And hopefully this helps you out and we can expand and move on.
In the essence of time, I just want to make sure there's not any other public comment on what just the board just discussed. Everybody's good? No other Zoom comment?
No.
Okay, so we will need to move a motion. Do we need a motion or is this direction at this time?
Yes, so the motion would be to introduce waive reading of this ordinance, authorized summary publication as amended.
I agree. I make that motion.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Seeing none, 5-0. Thank you, everyone. Yes. We're over, yeah, sorry, we moved it pretty fast. We're good.
Well, just, the parking has to be addressed really seriously, especially in the public.
Yeah, and Jack brought that up. We know. I think this will motivate us to make that figure out a solution.
You need to feed your cat.
There was this much.
Okay.
I was president of the board of the museum, and I looked into a common space marked up.
Okay.
Public works here. He said we would lose space, but in general, in the long run, there really needs to be more something addressed. That's all.
Thank you. With that, we'll move on to the next order of business, which is supervisor announcements. And since Marita has spoken a lot today, I'm going to revert it over to Stopper and let it start with Stopper today and move down the dais. Thank you, everyone. Stopper.
This is the first time a female hasn't told me to be quiet in a while.
We can change.
Thank you, Madam Chair. With that, that's the only announcement I have to make at
Take
this
it while
time.
you're winning. Gary.
I don't have any comments.
Supervisor Gary Mindy.
Attended the RCRC annual meeting. Very good. Learned lots of new stuff. Came back with a lot of inspiration and good ideas. So, thank you.
Supervisor Callaway.
I have Central Sierra Child Support, Gary. We have that on Monday. And just remind people the concourse is this weekend at Ironstone and it supports FFA and 4-H.
You can find a parking place.
You can find a parking space. Thank you.
And I too attended ICIC with Jack and it was very informative. I learned a lot. It's good. It was also good to see our fellow board members across the state. With that, before we all get up, I need to move next on the agenda is closed session and I need to turn it over to the clerk to read out.
Item number 8, pursuant to Government Code Section 54956.9 D1, conference with legal counsel regarding existing litigation, County of Shasta et al. Versus Amerisource Bergen Drug Corporation et al. In regards to Purdue Pharma LP et al.
With that, I'm going to open it up for public comment. There's none in the room. Are there any on Zoom?
There is none.
Seeing no public comment, we will convene into closed session and